Well, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you had a great lunch or had a chance to get some lunch. Can you hear me? Can you? All right. Testing. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you had a chance to get lunch and it was reasonable in a very short period of time. As you can see on the screen, that's our agenda for the afternoon. We're going to start with a fireside chat with Amanda Duquette, who, again, as you know, is the ACA, and Bill McEhaney, who is the CIO for USCIS. My understanding is going to be a robust discussion and follow with some Q&A, and then we're going to go into the technology division panels that's on the agenda. I had two quick items for you before I turn it over to the fireside chat team. One is a couple of people approached me and seemed like a lot of industry is not aware that there's a government procurement conference to be held in DC tomorrow. It's an all-day event. Another opportunity for you to meet small business specialists across all of the government. DHS will be there, so you can meet other members of the our team from DHS, and there's some matchmaking booths as well as some breakout sessions to help industry learn how to do business with the federal government. Second, I think I mentioned this. I'm going to stress it again. We will be posting these slides on sam.gov in the near future, probably in a day or two. So give you an opportunity to download the slides from SAM so you won't miss anything. I see a number of phones come out and taking pictures throughout the day. So feel free to keep your phone in your jacket and just relax and think of questions to ask Bill and Amanda. So without further ado, I want to bring our panel up and turn it over to them.
All right, so the comment of fireside chat, right, it invokes an image. We are just two friends sitting with 500 of our closest friends in our cozy living room in front of the crackling fireplace. There is no adorable background with a nicely decorated mantle, but you can just imagine it. So welcome to the wonderful world of Bill and Amanda.
With Larry eating potato chips.
Oh.
There we go.
Baked Lays at that. All right. Well, so Bill and I have very frequent engagement. We are constantly in these brainstorming sessions. Just a few weeks ago, he and a bunch of his team flew up to Vermont, and we sat there for a couple of days, and we talked through some of the current priorities and challenges and brainstormed different ways we could pivot on some acquisitions and really incorporate new technologies and new processes and make sure they're dynamic and breathing with us. And so this is like a little version of this conversation. And just so you know, I have some questions if it gets stale. Otherwise, I'm just peppering Bill. So feel free to come up to the mics, put anything in the live chat if you're virtual, and just be a part of our conversation as one of our 500 friends in the living room, so to speak. So Bill, just to kick us off, you guys have so many just incredibly dynamic and changing priorities. What has been going on in the OIT space?
I need to finish my.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll just keep talking for a few more minutes.
I need to finish my cough drop. So.
He wasn't kidding. All right. I can foreshadow that Bill is going to answer in a minute.
No pressure, no pressure. All right, no, first, thank you. It's such a pleasure. I talked to various old colleagues, friends from industry here. It's just a different feeling to get back in the room, to do this. I think that these, by and large, are so much more effective when we can do this. Shout out to all those who are here virtually. We can do this plus that, right? We've got easily, a couple hundred here in the room, and how many do we have online? Mike, do you know that number?
Right
140. Now. So, another third the size of the room here. And as I recall, the industry events that I've been to in the past, this is a pretty good industry day. So congratulations to everyone, our multimedia folks, but particularly OCON for pulling this together. I think that this is a win-win, right? Gives everyone here an opportunity to hear from us, to have some time together, to create some, offline conversations, but to also give us, the agency, a better buying opportunity by talking about what our real needs are. What have we been up to is the question? Foreshadow. Lots happening. I mean, every day, every quarter, every fiscal year has just been crazy. I think somebody said we hadn't done this since 2016. I think we did one like 2020 and a couple of they blend together. But whether we're talking about the pandemic, we're talking about the financial situation the agency went through, we're talking about the humanitarian efforts going on around the world. It is a constant and ongoing adventure here. And to look at USCIS 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, you're looking at a different CIS. And while in my portfolio, a lot of the things are the same, right? It changes every day, whether it be the requirements, the implementation, the technology, the players, the people, the objectives. This is, our mission is a very dynamic and volatile, maybe wrong word.
Depending on the
changing, we'll go with dynamic for the moment here. It's a changing landscape. It goes without saying, particularly this room understands, all roads lead to IT. And I am very fortunate to have a very strong team, both on the federal side and also on the industry side. And that doesn't come by just chance. That comes through a lot of hard scrutiny, a lot of bruises, a lot of experience. But I think our team gets better every year. And I think as we go on in the conversation, maybe I'll get into some of those details.
A very unscripted kickback to me, to be honest. You still had a few more talking points. We definitely have a lot going on. I would like to just take this opportunity, I think, if you could introduce some of your current challenges and priorities. So, well established, the agency is incredibly dynamic. IT is at the backbone of absolutely everything we do. We've heard a lot today about some of our initiatives, some of our programs that are more operations centric. Things like the call center, and there was a great question about how the call center, will it eventually, converge completely with the My USCIS program, for example. There's so many things that are IT at the background, and even in the evolution of what we're doing, all of our digitization efforts and all of our person-centric efforts, regardless of the program office that's driving it, OIT enables. First and foremost. So many priorities for you to try and balance on a daily basis. What comes to mind as some of your top priorities?
So that's a question we get often, right? And the analogy I'll use here is, in my world, it's almost like you're running a city, right? And at any given time, something's going on in the city, whether it be over in that district or it be over in this district, and whether it's related to, law enforcement or utility or services or there's just a plethora of things that can go on. So like, I would answer the question in different ways, whether I'm talking about Rob's space or if I'm talking about David's space. There's constantly things going on. But probably at the executive level, one of my biggest challenges is again, our mission space is very dynamic. We are in an election cycle, right? All roads lead to IT. There are no shortage of humanitarian requirements around our world. And that just makes priorities very difficult to manage, maintain, and stay up with. We like to try to do trade-off, but the reality is here, there's not a lot of room for trade-off because everything is important. So that's really kind of what is difficult, is kind of making the trade-off without trading off. and to keep those priorities going. That equates to a lot of resources, a lot of moving pieces. Back to the city analogy is if you're changing something, if you're closing a road, or if you're building a new building, it's got to work within the city, right? And obviously the same goes for the IT landscape. Is if you're going to build, maintain, or innovate in this space, you've got to come in eyes wide open and ready to collaborate across the space, because everything does affect everything in our space.
I'm sitting here going, okay, this is the first time I've heard ever Bill talk about USCIS as a city. So following this track here, I think of how things are changing in our. I
thought of that like an hour ago.
It's a good one. Okay. So now we have a building that needs an addition. So there's so many things I think that we're piling on right now. So I'll throw a few challenges that I see and just how you can coordinate and facilitate and orchestrate in this city within your current budget to try and make some of these work. So one thing we heard already today a couple of times was AI. Hate to start with such a loaded topic, but we all know that AI is something that's coming. I mean, we already operate and use and leverage a lot of AI, but not necessarily Gen AI, right? Or not necessarily you're shifting from those learning models and progressing upward. And so I know in some of the conversations we've had a lot of hesitancy with really introducing some of this into the space just full scale. We have obviously every A file is a person, a lot of PII, a lot of security concerns. So what are some of the things that you guys are trying to figure out how you can build and construct and navigate as AI transforms the entire city? It might be an underwater city.
I'm trying to think of something that makes the analogy work, but I don't think fast enough. Hey, look, AI clearly is in modern times the most disruptive thing going on in technology, and probably you could soon to say even culture. Might be premature saying that, but so AI is disruptive on many levels. Fundamentally, and by the way, advertisement, Erica Botts is soon to be here if she's not already in the room. Our CTO, who is also our Chief AI Officer, will be on on both panels this afternoon, digging more with AI. But AI is clearly very disruptive across the landscape, whether it be technological, cultural, and what we're following the DHS responsible use policies. And so we're spending a bunch of time evaluating all of our implementations, our ideas. We've been doing AI like everyone else for quite some time, and we recognize that. But that's kind of like traditional. Now with the advent of Gen AI and AI becoming so popular, we're having to evaluate against these principles. There's like 11 principles that we're following. Every AI initiative. We've got two pilots, which I'll talk about here. But I wrote these down because it's really, I kind of divide AI into these five pillars that we're looking at it, and they all kind of follow the responsible use pattern here. But first we have to kind of cultivate an AI culture. So what exactly does that mean, right? You want to have a culture that appreciates and is not necessarily afraid of how we can leverage the capabilities and the potentials of AI. So we have sort of cultivating a mission culture around that. Probably one of the harder things to do is to build that culture. You have an issue of ethics and trust. Okay, whether you get into the legal aspects of this, you have the trust aspects of what we're doing with data, and then you also have the evaluation of the products that are coming out. So you have a standard that you're establishing around ethics and trust, right? We have to build skills and expertise. Obviously, this is a very changing landscape. The skills and expertise, let's face it, with the new, there's a lot of AI that's been going on for years and years and years, But with the new implementations and a lot of that being driven by industry and how they're building it into their product space, the true hands-on experience with that is something that is difficult to find, but will take time, and over time we are investing in the skills and expertise. There's the whole data aspect of this. Of course, data is what's going to drive a lot of the AI, and so we have no shortage of conversations within IT and also with our CDO organization around data and how data is going to be used in these AI spaces. You know, again, these parameters all work together, and then ultimately, you know, there's nothing more distracting in an IT environment than new technology, right? And so everybody wants to kind of roll up their sleeves and play with the new technology, but one of the harder parts of this is to actually connect it with an actual business requirement. And so we're looking for those opportunities to actually connect these technologies to the right product, and then, you know, balancing with all the other things that I've talked about. We do have 2 AI pilots that we're really proud of, particularly the first one. We built a little pilot to actually help us train asylum officers for interviews. And so this is an interactive model where we can kind of simulate an applicant interview based upon a culture, based upon a particular country, based upon certain conditions, and pretty impressive glimpse at the potentials of AI. We built that on Anthropic, AWS, and pretty cool. We're also doing a translation pilot. We're still really in the infancy of that project, so I don't really have a lot of details to talk about there. But we've got 2 AI pilots. But here again, industry is going to push and move AI probably faster than government moves. And so I think that on my side of the coin, it's about governing, and those are the 5 pillars that we're governing it through.
I know there's so much more to this space, and we've had quite a few conversations about AI and what that means. And there was actually, between some questions that were asked and then some dialogue with industry on the break just barely, I actually got some interesting feedback about, so the questions were centered, Bill, on AI and the proposal process. Now, just to recap, especially for those who weren't in our morning session, there is nothing we are going to do or could do to prohibit or to have visibility into that process in regards to what you guys are leveraging to write your proposals. Where it gets kind of interesting is code challenges, because the reason we do code challenges is we want to see your capability of developing code. And when you're using Gen AI to develop the code, while that might be reality in the future in the USCIS space, it's not reality today. And so I didn't know if that sparked any concerns or thoughts for you. I told industry in the room today that we would definitely probably be shifting to counteract this and to make sure that we're really ensuring that we're contracting with firms who have that innate capability versus ability to leverage new and emerging technology with more in-person tech demos and tech challenges. But as you transform this and involve it in this space, do you see us being able to shift some of our contracting efforts to upscale some of the labor categories and shift it more towards some of their, essentially their deployment and their testing of the generated code versus the development of the code?
That's a trick question. So we're going to walk before we run. I will suggest that in years ahead, that will be the way things are done. It's kind of like using Gen AI to write your resume today, right? I think it's a good starting point. It kind of gets you a framework. It gets you rolling, but it becomes pretty evident the deeper you go that very clearly this is the code in this case is coming from another environment. Remember, our city, our enterprise here is very specific. And so, you know, if you're going to do integration in C3, I'd be very impressed with any LLM out there today that could actually produce code that would be viable in that platform. But to come up with a starting point, I think that's increasingly the reality of our space. To gen up a cloud environment, an AWS environment for a particular requirement. Yeah, if you get the basic framework there, I don't necessarily see issues, and increasingly that's just kind of how it's done. So the pair programming aspect of that, I don't necessarily, I think it's more of us, distilling that through these pillars that I talk about. But it's not even 50% of the solution at this point in time, and that becomes pretty clear pretty quick.
All right, appreciate that, because I know there's definitely folks from industry that are already trying to envision that, and it's hard, right? You contract for 3 or 5 years at a time, and we're on the precipice of this major change, and what does that look like? And so we all do our best and try and attack the situation with what we know today and what our constraints are today. So I'm going to take us back to your city, because I love it. And so we have all of these things happening in the city, and I think you mentioned some of your infrastructure elements. So you have so many things that you guys are working, especially as we pivoted with the pandemic to remote work. God, it takes me back to that very first week when we started to launch things in Skype and Teams, and everyone had to stop using video calls because the the network couldn't handle it. What are some of the things you guys are really doing to prepare us? I mean, as we move more and more files digitally, right? The amount of people that are using our systems concurrently and what that looks like. Our infrastructure is really at the core of our operational success.
A ton of things going on in that space. I'll go back a couple of years here and reckon. I'm kind of looking at Larry. He might remember some of these things early on. When we started talking about, during the pandemic that we're going to have to go remote as an agency and so forth, of course that had me up at night worrying about it. But thank goodness for that tree we had planted years ago. Because this agency had invested significantly in infrastructure, and we were able to sustain that because we had and we continue to build on a very robust infrastructure, whether that be cloud environments, whether that be our network environments. We were able to pivot. We were actually migrating to 365 right when that pandemic started, and had we not continued with that migration, things like Teams and so forth would have been nearly impossible. So the point one I will make on that is, for every one of these crises that we talk about, and they are pretty regular, it's what you decided to do 5 years ago that will determine your success in our space. And so I am continually appreciative of this agency and the resources that we spend to make those things so, because the things I'm building today are preparing us for those challenges tomorrow. So, when we start talking about specific acquisitions, whether we're talking about AES, right? And Rob and his team will be up here shortly to talk a little bit more about this. But this isn't your AES of yesterday, right? Whether we're talking about NEON, right? NEON is something else I think Rob and his team will be touching on. But the footprint of our enterprise, of our operational enterprise, has so radically changed since then. And so we need to start building those for those acquisitions, but then ultimately those services for where the puck is going, right? And we've been pretty good about strategically planning in that space. I'll say the same about some of the delivery things here when we get into those a little bit more. But we're constantly kind of looking around the corner and not saying, hey, this is the AES, insert acquisition name. But this isn't, the way we did it the last 5 years is not the way we're going to do it the next 5 years, right? And I think that's really kind of the punchline here.
And to do that without renaming the acquisition again.
And then there's the naming. You would never think something was so difficult than to name an acquisition, but yeah.
All right, so I am actually going to keep going. I love the city thing. And to be honest, I literally, I just like riffing off of these things. So it's fun. So I'm thinking of the wall around your city, your cybersecurity. And so when you said earlier, it's what we do 5 years ago that really sets us up for success. My immediate flashback was to early conversations with Shane Barney, our CISO, and his wonderful team, and all of the work at the NOC and the SOC and all of our various C3, I'm trying to think of the Cybersecurity Support Services, trying to think of the acronym real quick, contracts that we have laid the foundation for. There's a lot going on in this space. Certainly things like SolarWinds and, they shed light on our need to really rely on corporate compliance and clean hygiene in our coding and the software that we use. And there's agency-wide, department-wide, government-wide initiatives like the software attestations that many of you are probably aware of or filling out right now. What are you doing or what are you prioritizing with that cybersecurity posture in our space to protect your beautiful city?
So much to say. We could have an entire hour on this alone, and I'll try to do it justice. In fact, Shane is at the SOC. He's unfortunately not here to tease, but I will tell you, before I came to this job, one of the things I advertised is I had spent several years of my professional background in just about every different aspect of IT. And the one exception to that comment is cyber. And so when I came to this job, I certainly was aware and appreciative of cyber, well, appreciative in that old context, but it didn't take me very long to appreciate so much more the real threat and the full appreciation for what we're doing in the cyberspace. In another regard, it is legitimately, without a doubt, the number one thing that keeps a person like me up at night. The threat is real. It is not the boogeyman, as some of us, who are on the delivery side of things for so many years would often say. It is real, and so I am fully appreciative of our ISD team and our CISO, even though I'll never say it when he's in the room.
I can understand.
So with that said, there's another landscape. The perimeter of the city, if you will, is changing often, right? When you're talking to the chief of police of any major city, right, the threat is always changing, it's moving, it's dynamic, it's not always the same. And so once you figure out how to work with, the Italian mafia, you're figuring out that was something of yesterday, right? So goes the same in the cyberspace. And particularly, you were talking about AI. AI is introducing a whole new set of requirements for cyber, and we're having to retool our cyber services and monitoring and defenses around the whole AI threat landscape. And so, in fact, that's part of the reason that Shane is spending this week at the SOC, is to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what that looks like and the guardrails that we are implementing in that regard. But the cyber landscape continues to evolve. We have made, as I think everyone here in the room understands, we have made significant strides. And here again, kudos to this agency for investing in Zero Trust. But I think we are on the path to resourcing a very strong Zero Trust implementation here. We're kind of in that self-scoring phase right now, and we feel like that with the investments that we're making, our Zero Trust is on a really good trajectory. The other thing that I'll say so much about this implementation here is cyber is truly embedded in all aspects of our organization. It is not a paper tiger here. We have cyber involved on our delivery side. We have cyber involved in our operations side. And I think that you'll see that our response to things like SolarWinds and other unnamed cyber threats that we receive literally on a regular basis is a tribute to the fact that you haven't seen us on the front page of the paper.
Absolutely. And for awareness, right? Every digital record, every entity that we are protecting, right? Should there be a cyber breach, not only would it be catastrophic, but it would individually impact those 100 million people and everyone that is affiliated with that form. So it's not just that individual, it's everyone that they've petitioned for or everybody that has submitted documentation. So if they're submitting an affidavit for support, there's all kinds of their data and their financial data that is all combined. So, I mean, the impact cannot be understated. I probably shouldn't have used the wall around the city as the analogy because insider threat is just as much. So sometimes they're in the city. But going back to the city, it took me a second because earlier you said we'll touch on delivery later. And I was like, what about delivery? So we have factories that build planes, trains, and automobiles in the city so we can deliver. You really you rely very, very heavily on these people in this room, as well as numerous other of our industry partners in your mission delivery of DevOps. And so within that portfolio, I know we're going to talk about it a lot on our panels today. I just want to give you a minute to talk a little bit about some of your priorities, what you appreciate, and what you want industry to know to really prepare and support us as we continue to rely very, very heavily on their support in modernizing and bringing us to the 21st century here in our IT systems and the various platforms and domains.
Now, this is really exciting. Where we are today, where we have come from. So at an event like this, I would encourage you, of course, a lot of folks here are looking at River, and a lot of folks are looking at Rapid, and a lot of folks are looking at ODOS, and a lot of folks are looking at AI and so forth. I totally get that and appreciate that perspective. I would suggest to you that as you pull together capture for these initiatives, don't think of it as those specific lanes. Don't think C3. Don't think Ellis. Don't think my USCIS. I want you to think of the whole landscape, the whole life cycle of what this agency does. And the way I do that is I break it up into domains. You've probably heard me talk about domains in the past. And so chop it up in our landscape in that domain context, and it really starts to make better sense, right? And so in the intake space, my USCIS is the primary intake face of this agency. We are looking at additional channels, whether we're talking about doing like a PDF intake, where we're talking about doing an API, a third-party API, type of a channel. That's all built around that foundation of a my USCIS type of a paradigm, right? Right now, I was looking at these numbers earlier. We have over 17 million accounts in our my USCIS space, right? We're ingesting through just my USCIS over 5 million cases a year. I could bore you with all kinds of details. You can gen those up pretty easily. But the point is here is a channel that this agency started investing in some time ago, and now it is the mainstay. It is the primary intake function. Now, we still have the lockbox operation for OIDP, and we continue to ingest, but all of that intake mechanism is increasingly efficient and integrated and standardized. Right, and so we're not trying to figure out, what's the JSON schema for sending something in, right? It's standardized, but that whole paradigm flows downstream, right? To the next, after we do the ingestion, we're getting our lockbox data through standardized data through JPMC, and also from my USCIS, as I say. We're working on like a PDF intake type of thing, which is reusing a lot of that stuff. All of that flows into the case management domain very smoothly, right? And so now we're ingesting into our case management platforms, whether it be, don't think Ellis, don't think global, don't think next gen, don't think C3, but think case management domain. And all of the data is increasingly standardized. Now, of course, we have many years worth of older data that we're still dealing with and refining, but the flow is increasingly, because of this integration that we've invested in, the flow continues to work. We're adjudicating now over 80% of our workload on the Ellis platform. That is a tribute, all these things that I'm saying, that's a tribute to all of our partners here in the room, some great expertise here on staff, and really for this agency who has chosen for years and years to invest heavily in the implementation of this, that 80% of the workload of this agency is being processed on that case management platform, specifically the Ellis platform. You'll hear more about that today. So whether you're interested in ODOS or you're interested in River, Rapid, I think the companies that differentiate are the ones that come to the table that understand our entire enterprise and understand, back to the city landscape, like, what the intricacies of each of these districts represent, whether that be cultural, technical, infrastructure, the lack of and so forth, the disruptors, the folks that understand that and stitch that to the mission. Those are the folks who are going to succeed in our environment. And so I'd highly encourage you to have that systematic view.
All right, this is going to feel like a trick question, and I apologize in advance, Bill. But for those who want to obtain that systematic view, for those who are new to their exposure to USCIS or haven't really broken through, what advice do you give them about how they can learn more about what we are doing, what we have in our technical landscape, and how they can really understand and obtain that kind of information so that they can be more competitive and successful if they win?
It's one of the good things about a mission like ours, right? It's not hard to find information about our mission and perspectives and history and so forth. But I will acknowledge, I've been around the immigration IT landscape since 1984, and I would have thought prior to coming to this seat that, like, I pretty much know all these moving pieces, but I got to tell you, the level of detail, the magnitude of detail in this aspect of immigration that is in our mission space is mind-blowing to me continuously. It is the fire hose. When you start talking forms and interrelated forms and the details of filing and all the evidence that goes along with it, it's just mind-blowing to me. And so I would invest, to your question, how do I learn about this? First, invest heavily in understanding the macro mission, as I was just talking about here a moment ago, but the actual specific benefit types that the platform that you're going after is actually servicing, understanding the context of that. How do you do that? There's no shortage of information, publicly available information, and I'm sure that everyone can dig into that. Invest in immigration knowledge. But then also our staff within OIT, and I think even throughout, is fully available to talk about these things, not necessarily for doing trainings or education like that, but then come and talk to us. Pull a Marilyn Tunis aside and get an idea of specifically what requirements are keeping her up at night with regard to her portfolio. But it's not for the faint of heart. Here, I will say, not that I'm the smartest guy ever, but I am amazed on a regular basis the level of detail and the nuance related to our mission. However, to say there's a lot of maturity in this space. It's not a super secret. It's just a matter of focusing on it and distilling that and connecting that specifically with the problem you're trying to solve.
I appreciate that, Bill. And what I especially want to highlight is that his team is available. So if you have questions, definitely reach out. I heard at least Monica laughing over there. That would be Monica. I almost blanked on her current last name, so I will not say it. Padron Harris. No, seriously. So there's POCs and APFS records. We definitely are out here and we're trying to engage with industry. If you guys are just trying to understand or connect the dots, or if you have questions on acquisitions, definitely leverage those POCs. We want to make sure that you are, you are correctly aligned with the expectations of the acquisition, and so that it's critical that you understand, the environments we're working on, what the expectations are, what the challenges are, what the skill sets we really need are, and if you see any alignment or I'm saying lack of alignment, frankly, in between what we're saying and what you're seeing in the solicitation, let us know, because we really need to make sure that our requirements reflect our actual need. And sometimes we're just too close at hand to see what is there or what isn't there in regards to closing those gaps. If you don't mind, Bill, I think I'm going to open it up for industry Q&A. So I'm not sure, Danielle, if there's anything in the chat to start. So if you are online virtually, feel free to start entering your Q&A in the chat. And for those who are in the room, feel free to come up. We have 2 mics. We will not be passing around mics because we just don't have enough mic runners, but feel free to line up and we will start taking questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Sahej Singh. I'm with FIDUS. I was formerly at Databricks, where I covered DHS pretty extensively, in particular CIS. So I always love to pose this question, especially to CIOs, because I think it's very easy for us to throw around the words AI and technology, but we'll take your city analogy, Bill. Looking at the city and going a little more macro on infrastructure, right? Technology is only as good as the people and the processes. And you alluded to this a little bit, right? The cultural change that you guys are going through. But can you touch on a little bit more on, from a people processes perspective, what does your vision look like over the next 3-5 years for the agency to make sure you develop the right people, put the right processes in place so you have really great processes so that when you do procure technology, whenever that ends up happening, right? The people and processes that are there to support the mission outcomes versus, you buy this great technology and then it sits on a shelf, right? So we'll love a little bit of insight there. Thank you.
I mean, that's the trick, right? Is balancing that, and we really are in that discovery stage right now, particularly with relation to AI. The good news, and I talked about the data portion of what we're looking at. The good news is among the great things this agency has invested in is our data lake environment here is. Shout out to the DBiz team here. It is quite extensive, comprehensive, and so forth. So I would say we've got a really good head start in that space. But remember, we're just one piece of a larger ecosystem of immigration data. And so it's a matter of synthesizing that and making sure that we're all counting the same way across the agencies. Before you start plugging in the AI capabilities. And so whether we're talking about sentiment analysis or we're talking about, trends and so forth, I think that we are going to be pressured to move faster than our bureaucracy will typically move in government. The good news is we have a very motivated secretary as it relates to implementation of AI solutions, and without a doubt, we have a CIO at the department level and at the component levels, for that matter as well, that are leaning in very heavily toward the implementation. I think that DHS is probably leaning forward more in the AI space than most, and so these processes that you're talking about are something that I think that we're already investing in. We've come up with these pillars of responsible use. I know that the responsible use group meets more often than our staff probably wants to, but I think we are moving as fast as any government would be expected to move. And so toward that, I'm pretty optimistic about our implementation of these things. But we're still on training wheels in that regard. So I would encourage, whether we're talking about, support for code, you have to be very careful at this stage by implementing or turning on those tools in these environments. It will get lots of attention as we normalize, but I think it will normalize pretty quickly.
Appreciate it.
Hello, Andy Lieber with Venterra Corporation. Earlier today, our first speaker said that we should get to know USCIS's mission, challenges, and limitations. You've talked about the mission and the challenges. I haven't heard anything about the limitations. So what are the limitations? It could be in addition to money, but it needs, to me, it should be more than just money. Yeah.
I think that one through. I mean, it's obviously going to be, we can only do so much, right. And those are going to be your classic responses to those things. I think also one of the limitations from an IT perspective is the magnitude of the enterprise, right? The immigration space across DHS is really primarily three agencies, right. But what's often missed is, I'll look through you to one of my staff. Maryland, we have about 6,000 non-USCIS users on the LS platform. Is that right? Yeah. And so that's just a glimpse. Whether we're talking about Department of State, right, or we're talking about EOR up at Justice, or we're talking about Department of Labor for the H-2A environment, right, is our mission is so broad and intricate in what I was describing earlier. Implementation in this space is not for the faint of heart, right? And as our systems grow, as we become more reliant, 80% use of our workload, when something's not working, it's that much more visible, right? We had a snafu on our intake channel here the other day, and it was amazing to me to start just seeing like social media response to, here's USCIS and here's a system issue. It used to be in the old days, like, the public didn't get to see your laundry, right? Now they do. So I think those are some of they're more challenges than limitations. Okay. Maybe I'll turn that into a positive, and I will say we're up for the challenge, the limitations, because I think this agency has a strong foundation, a very strong technical capability in the staff, and I think our vendors are making a lot of that true.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Avinash Diolalikar. I work for KBR. I don't know if you are aware of KBR. No?
Yeah. You dare not say no.
Good. That helps me not to waste my time explaining to you what KBR is. But we are new to USCIS. We are interested in working with you on your mission solutions. You mentioned earlier that you focus for new entrants, don't focus on specific objectives like my USCIS or others, but focus more on the whole landscape, right? And so on that front, you mentioned that focus on domains. So could you expand a little bit on what those domains are that you mentioned earlier? That's all.
Happy to do that, and in fact, we can publish. Slide, don't you? Yeah, I want a slide because I have this beautiful slide that we worked on, and I can ask the staff here to make sure that we'll oh, you have it?
We'll see.
Oh man, that'd be super cool. Yep. Okay, yeah, so if we don't have that slide, I'll make sure that we get it out. So let me, before I get to the domain specifically, let me try to pinpoint your answer. So, and in fact, I want your AES folks to also tune into this answer here, right? And so for a long time, we were organized sort of what I'll call in verticals, right? And so we had the folks who were focusing on this platform, and they were maintaining and administering this platform, and then we had the delivery folks who were working on this platform, and this kind of orientation, right? And Conway's law says like your products will start looking like your org chart. It was true here, and it is true anywhere. And so I introduced this concept called the lead technical integrator, LTI. And this person by design this role by design was implemented to work horizontally across the organizations, to start stitching things together, to do that holistic view as I was describing earlier, to stitch these domains. The first thing we did was come up with this domain. So we've got intake, we've got case management, right? We've got risk and fraud, we've got infrastructure, we've got services that are integrated together. And so we'll have a slide here to talk about that. But the integrator's job was to define and stitch together and make those lines between the domains gray through those integration points. So whether you're talking a loosely coupled infrastructure or we're talking about just integration across those. And so we then start to talk about not only technical or horizontal integration across capabilities, specifically delivery platforms, but we're also introducing the idea of SRE, across site reliability engineering, across the operational aspects of the organization. So one of the biggest disruptors that you'll hear about later in the panel in the AES space, and even the NEON space to a certain extent, well, even though we're still trying to figure out those details, is exactly that implementation of the vertical administration of platforms, and then also the horizontal integration with whether it be delivery or cyber or any of those aspects. Same back to the delivery side of that. So like back to ODOS, right? You know, you can think global for like the humanitarian line of business, and then you can think Ellis for, you know, the other lines of business, and you think C3, but really, it is the stitching of all of those together, because, you know, it's not a dirty little secret, but one of the realities is increasingly a lot of the services that we provide for the global platform are actually Ellis services. And so we're doing that strangler pattern to make that all one domain. And so the lead technical integrators and all of our delivery teams, and increasingly on the infrastructure side of the equation, is looking at this landscape horizontally. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
At some point, something will come up that is not necessarily a beautiful graphic. OIT does a wonderful job of doing these fantastic graphics, but it's a picture of your website with your domains listed with the definition of the domains. Here we go. Sort of. It's partly there. Speaking of limitations.
That's not it. I did, oops. Oh, well, it was halfway it.
For limitations, we do have many.
No, so I think I'll make a commitment that we'll publish that.
Yeah, for those attending, we will be posting something on sam.gov with the entire slide deck, so we will add this slide and just embed it into the slide deck. I have seen some people taking pictures throughout the day. You will have complete access to the slides and content. All right.
Hi, Lisa Goldberg, Publicis Sapient. This morning, EXA was talking about how they want to start measuring in terms of outcomes rather than output. And I was wondering how your vision of tying all these systems together also relates to measurable outcomes, particularly for, say, employee experience, but really all across the board.
Yeah, they were probably talking about that in the customer experience context. Yeah, no, exactly. I work closely with EXA leadership on a regular basis. And in fact, the agency has actually named a CX executive to respond to the executive orders around that. And so we're building KPIs there, right? So it's not only like, your traditional KPIs, but it's going to be, it is increasingly around, not only user experience, but customer experience and efficiencies of how easy is it to navigate, use, and integrate with these systems. One of my biggest strategies from a CIO perspective is I believe that there is a correlation between your integration of your systems and the customer experience, right? And so whether you're dealing with an account online with my USCIS, which should be in the EXA space, and then how that account experience is for all of our other experiences. So I'm trying to stitch together the different account types. We're creating new account types for legal firms who have different structures of how they organize their attorneys. And so it's the usability aspect of things. And so EXA particularly does a ton of outreach, whether we're through ALA, through the Ombudsman's office, to work with these firms. As we start standing up third-party intake or third-party integration through PI, we're also doing that, working with the commercial case management systems to make sure that there is a relationship there. But the more we standardize on those things across our platform, to me, is a correlation to that user experience at the end of the day.
And is there a vision for the employee experience to follow a similar plan?
I didn't
The
hear.
employee experience.
Absolutely, yeah. We're talking about our end users. In fact, we were on the call earlier with our deputy director about like how employee experience in these different areas. And so when we get up on one of these other panels, we do regular katas and clinics in our field sites. We're getting ready to do one for literally 3 weeks in New York here very shortly to constantly look at that feedback. We're also crowdsourcing some of our requirements or to help in that prioritization. Somebody asked about a question, what's one of the harder things to do? And I said like the prioritization. So we crowdsourced that for one of our platforms to see what does the employee need, and it doesn't necessarily go through that hierarchy that we would normally prioritize requirements. And so there is a significant appreciation and sensitivity to employee experience because obviously that translates to production.
Thank you.
Your mic doesn't. We'll take the question.
All right. Hi, Bill. Andy Livermore with Edgewater
Andy.
Federal. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Real quick, you talked about your domains. USCIS shares a lot of data and works with a lot of external organizations, internal to DHS and external to DHS. Can you talk a little bit about how you apply the domains to your other stakeholders within DHS and maybe outside DHS as well, Department of State or whatever it might be? Or do you even apply that?
It helps in starting the conversation, but I don't know that there's necessarily any technical implementations. I'm not even sure, Andy, if this is the question you're asking, but when we're doing integration across the other entities, mm-hmm. It's usually on a relationship specifically. So if we're sharing, information with CBP, it's like a transactional type of things, and we've standardized a lot of those schemas. But I don't know, unless somebody has a better answer. I don't necessarily start that conversation at the domain level, but the domains perfectly describe our operating environment, our life cycle here. Mm-hmm. It would be great to see that fit into a larger context, but I'm not aware that anyone has necessarily done that.
That's what I was wondering if you were doing that.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, not a logical model that I'm aware of in that magnitude.
Bill, our online question reads,
Do you see the transformation of local developed apps, LDA, moving towards the low code platforms of Epic? And how do you see the integration of RPAs?
Yes, good question. And of course, Epic the Epic acquisition focuses specifically on that. One of the other objectives that we have come a long way on, but still have a long way to go, is that of what we call citizen development. And we're increasingly making available platforms and to provide non-IT organizations the ability to build capabilities. Here's another one where we've got a lot of governance and process questions and challenges as we put those out. In my dream world, and I make Chris's life difficult here in making this so, but in my dream world, we're building pipelines by platform that I can hand that pipeline to a non-IT organization and say, as long as you're developing within that pipeline, we're good to go from a cyber perspective as well as a production support perspective. So we've come a long way. We've got Epic underway. We've finally gotten the staffing has begun to build up, and so we're providing RPA support there. We've got the Power Apps platform, which is the highest priority. That seems to be the biggest demand that I'm getting from our operational entities. Of course, we've got ServiceNow requirements there and Salesforce requirements that are all being worked through those platforms. But Chris and his team are up trying to build that mythical pipeline that I speak of, and that's kind of like where I'm trying to get to. We're not there today, but that is what I'm pushing that team to accomplish.
Thank you, Bill.
Mike, how many more do we have in the chat?
We do not have any more online
Okay,
questions.
fantastic. All right, we'll take another question in the room.
Hi, my name's Heidi Girding. My question is about people. Specifically, USCIS does a great job of hiring contractors who provide incredible work for mailroom clerks, data entry clerks, case processing analysts, usually Service Contract Act level employees. I know a lot of the AI technology that could be infused would provide a lot of efficiencies to USCIS, while at the same time putting a lot of those lower skilled laborers out of work, creating an unemployment problem. I'm just wondering how the administration or DHS is thinking about this in terms of balancing what's best for the country in terms of finances and managing and efficiencies, while at the same time considering how it might impact unemployment rates in those lower level skills.
That's something we hear often, and one of the things I'll say first of all, it's hard for me to imagine us running out of work even with AI implementation. There will always be work to do. What we're trying to, I think what the administration and us therefore are trying to do is implement AI to make our existing and future workforce even more efficient, more throughput. It's hard for me to imagine with the backlogs that we face that we're ever going to run out of work at any level of the organization.
All right, I was just glad Bill took that one. We are
Ask
actually
the hard questions to Rob McMullen over here.
Well, speaking of that, you're about to have your opportunity. So I'm actually going to wrap us up. I truly appreciate your partnership, Bill, and your participation today and your ability to carve out a few hours in your incredibly busy schedule to prioritize this FaceTime with industry. And I think they all appreciate it as well.
Let me say a couple of things. First, a real shout out. I will tell you, the CIO roles, wherever you are in federal government, you live and die by your acquisitions. That's just a fact. It is a luxury, and probably half the reason I'm still employed, that we have such a good HCA and OCON organization here. The partnership is tremendous. I think that you see that reflected not only in our acquisitions, but ultimately in the products that you collectively are helping us build. So that correlation is there. That relationship is key. And I am very appreciative, Amanda, for you and your team, and for everyone here. I like to make myself as accessible as possible, but I'm sure many of you have written me untold number of emails and called my phone 50 times. It's hard.
I'm on that list too.
Yeah, it is very difficult, but please do keep reaching out. I do prioritize responsiveness to industry within the organization, and so for that, thank you for your time, and I'll be hanging out the rest of the day to help out.
Very much appreciate it, and it is a wonderful partnership. There's definitely it's a rocky road, but we make it a fun ride.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to kick it over to Chris Hatton, who is you met him earlier today, but if you're joining us just for the afternoon session, is the chief of our technology execution division. So all of the acquisitions that directly support Bill and his organization are under Chris's domain and control. And so we'll kick it over to Chris. Thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. For a show of hands, who was here for the morning session? All right, awesome. Who's new to us this afternoon? All right, just about everybody was here this morning. All right, so I won't reintroduce myself, but I will say we're excited for the afternoon session. I want you guys to fully engage and ask those questions of the panels that we're about to bring up. Unlike Rex, I do think that this group can't get enough of IT discussion. So as he said, we may learn more than we want to know about IT this afternoon. I do encourage you to challenge our customers and ask those hard questions. I'm not sure if you guys all know that we are divided up as 6 teams within the Office of Contracting. So Jonathan Latson, Patrick Gadwa, Selena Hemingway, Shauna Pendleton, Kenneth Brumfield, and Sarah Putnam. If you don't know those names, I urge you to reach out to them and get to know them. So we have 5 to 6 acquisitions to go through today. The first panel is our DevOps panel. And at this time, I'll invite Patrick, Jonathan, David, Chris, and Marilyn to the stage. Is Erica here as well? All right.
First. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Gadwa, Associate Chief supporting SDD. You may have seen my name attached to some things like Epic, Rapid, River, Speed, Didit, Planks, etc. Before I get into the specifics for River, I'll give a brief overview of River Rapid. So some of you may know they were previously under one umbrella of Rapid. We've since split that out, so now we have Rapid and River. We do not foresee any issues with vendors competing for both Rapid and River, so you can submit a quote for both. River specifically will be supporting the mission services and benefits portfolios. We're targeting, I think, 4 to 5 awardees in total. They'll be split up, I think it's 2 and then 2 to 3 for mission services or vice versa. We are in the acquisition planning phase still. So I may not be able to answer all your questions today, but to give some high-level information about the what we're anticipating to see in the RFQ. We do think that it will be an advisory down select, so 2 phases. First phase will be corporate capability, our factor 1, an advisory down select into phase 2. Phase 2 will be a coding challenge, mission focused coding challenge, and then price, of course. That's about it. I'll turn it over to Chris or Marilyn.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Wallace. I am the division chief for the Systems Delivery Division. I think we were going to talk a little bit about some of the finer details of River and Rapid. David, I'm not sure if you wanted to kick it off with a couple of notes or you want us to jump right in.
Sure. Is this thing on?
It's tough after lunch. The herd has gotten thin though, right? Coming right up. Thanks for setting us up right after lunch. That's awesome. I appreciate that. David Blair, the Deputy CIO for Delivery. So I think before we jump into these procurements, I think it's good just to kind of lay out a little bit of kind of philosophy and that will apply to all of these procurements. We're obviously USCIS, a bureaucracy like any other bureaucracy. It's interesting that we're organized on the delivery side into 3 kind of application delivery divisions. And then, of course, we typically have many different procurements, multi-award, usually multi-award. Within these divisions, we may have like multiple domains, broken up into individual teams. I mean, and I'm saying all that just to say that these are silos, right? And so inherently, we're going to have issues that occur with any kind of silo. And then what we're asking is we want to deliver end-to-end products. And I think that's what, and so I think you're going to hear this theme. You heard it from Bill talking about horizontal delivery. You talked a little bit about domains. But in the end, everything that we're doing as stewards of the U.S. immigration system, there's a person or a family or an employer that are impacted by what we're doing. And so all of these procurements, now we're talking numbers and length of time of award, but what you need to understand is, or what we're looking for is partners that understand our mission, that understand what we're trying to accomplish, that understand that there are families that are impacted by what we do. There are families that are impacted when we have platforms or services that are just degraded or if we have an outage. And so I think, again, moving forward across all these procurements, folks that understand our mission, business operation in which we're meant to support, that understand that we deliver end-to-end products and services, and that when there is if there is an issue, nobody's coming down and pointing at an individual team or a person or a contractor. They point to USCIS as if there's an issue. And so again, different procurements, but I just wanted to kind of lay a little bit of philosophy out there, and this is what we're looking for in our partnerships as we move forward. So then I'll shut up now, get off my soapbox, and we can jump over to, was it River first, we said? All right, River or Rapid?
Chris, but we're both River.
Okay. Yes.
So you too.
Well, if I could pull on the theme you started to hit on a little bit there, David, before we jump in. So I think it is important to kind of set the stage on what it is that we're looking for in a partner. And I think you've probably heard the very common theme over previous industry days, certainly today, and I heard Bill kind of repeat a lot of it as well. But we really are truly looking for partners, people that can come in and be strong leaders. We're not looking for organizations to come in and just maintain the status quo, right? We get so involved in just the chaos, literal chaos of day to day, just trying to keep our heads above water, that it's very rare that we have an opportunity to pick our heads up and look around and see what's happening around us. So we really do our best to try to break down some of those silos that the org chart kind of creates. But we're in this environment where to use Bill's term, everything impacts everything, right? So if we don't take the time to pick our heads up, say, where are we today? Where is it that we want to be, and how are we going to get there? Who do we need to partner with to get there, right? That's so critical to take the time to look at what's going on in TDD, to look at what's going on in IRNST, to look at what's happening across the operation space, and really help us be those visionaries, right? Bring your experience not just from other government agencies, bring your experience from industry. What have you done in the commercial space as well? Help be the fabric that sometimes we don't have, right? We're so focused heads down day to day that we don't always have the opportunity to really engage and go deep in some areas. But you may have supported a contract in one of our other delivery divisions, or you may have seen something similar in different in other federal space. So really, I think everyone's kind of beating that drum, but there's things that we miss, right? And you guys often are the fabric that can help bring those things together. So please, whether you're coming after work, you're involved here today, or you have future work here, don't wait for us to tell you to do it. Please, help be that fabric that brings and puts some of these pieces together for us. So just wanted to reiterate that. I think we really want to establish through both of these procurements, and we've tried to do it through some of our previous procurements and just the culture we've built, but we really want an innovative culture, right? We want to take educated risks. We want to try new things, new technologies. We don't want to be afraid of what's out there. Sometimes we always kind of operate in this mindset of better to ask for forgiveness. I think with the AI stuff, that's not so much the case. We can't really do that anymore, but it's okay to take educated risks. We really want to focus on process improvement. I think we've done a really good job of doing that over the years. I think we have some really strong processes, but there's a lot of room for continued improvement, whether it's the way that we engage with our stakeholders, internal processes within OIT, and our project teams as well. So again, don't be shy to bring those user experiences from across government into some of our programs here. All right, so I have a lot of other thoughts, but I think they'll kind of come out naturally through the conversation here. I'll give a quick overview and then kind of pass it over to Marilyn, so I'm not talking so much here. But so right now, I think we're going to focus a little bit on Rapid and River. Both of these acquisitions started out as one. So for those of you that are familiar, this was a carryover from our SPEED work. So SPEED was awarded about 3 years ago. It was a combination of multiple SDD programs combined into one. So it was the My USCIS portfolio. At the time, benefits and C3 was part of STD as well. So that was part of it. And then we had our mission services portfolio, which I'll talk a little bit about as well. There's a lot of lessons learned from SPEED, a lot of things that we are choosing to kind of carry forward into Rapid and River, and then some lessons learned and things that we're going to adjust. But just to reduce the confusion, it started out as everything in Rapid. We did some adjustments, and through market research, we kind of decided that we needed to pivot a little bit of different direction from what we had in SPEED. That kind of required us to break these out into two separate procurements. So as it stands, Rapid is the intake or My USCIS acquisition, and then River is going to be primarily focused on the benefits, the claims 3, and your mission services portfolio. So just a little, I know that it kind of went back and forth there for quite a while, so hopefully it's clear at this point what these are. So we did see a very significant expansion in the size when SPEED was awarded. It was, just what we expected it to be, and very, very quickly we exercised almost every optional CLIN on the contract. The mission services, the My USCIS portfolio expanded at a extremely rapid pace and became, a relatively very important but smaller program into something that is very big and kind of required a little bit of an adjustment as we move into the future. And so that's kind of what we'll talk about with Rapid. So at the risk of talking too much, I'll pass it to Marilyn, who can kind of talk a little bit about what River's going to look like. We did move over the benefits and C3 work from STD over to TDD. So it's, we're naturally aligned and coordinating, and there's a strong partnership between our two divisions. So she'll talk a little bit about the Claims 3 benefits side, and I can talk a little bit about mission services.
Thanks, Chris. Chris has covered a lot of the things that I was going to cover about, having integrated the legacy systems, modernization of digital services and security operations, overall enterprise solution delivery. One of the most important things I think is bringing that business value, right? As we move forward with River, we want to make sure that when you come to us, that you realize the business value is kind of the #1 thing from us. Our business is with us throughout the process, and we need to not be out there just coding something. We need to make sure that business is part of it all along the way. So that's very important to us. And, as we're integrating these legacy systems, there's going to be, older code that we'll need to bring over, and we're looking for innovative solutions for that as well. The other thing that's really important to us is transparency. So just transparency across as we're delivering.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick here and like foot stomp. When you talked about business value, again, through all these procurements, the same thing holds true. Again, so I'm gonna get on my soapbox here. The delivery of X widget is not ultimately the goal, right? Again, this goes back to this partnership. What we're trying to do is evolve our culture, mature our culture, but what we're delivering should be solving problems. So I call it practical delivery versus this kind of bright and shiny. And we have to be able to, this day and age, we have to be able to quantify, be able to measure the outcome of what we've delivered. If we're not improving, if we're not improving the adjudication rate or the lead time for how quickly a customer an applicant can get their green card, or an applicant gets a decision, then we're not doing our job. And so anything that we're doing this day and age has to be contributing has to have a business value, and it has to be quantifiable. So I just, again, foot stomping this, and again, partners that understand that the delivery of X that's on some roadmap, a milestone, that's not the end. Again, everything that we're doing has to be contributing to and delivering business value. To your point, an employee, again, is just as important as our applicants that are paying for an applicant or a green card. I mean, anyway, okay. Sorry.
They're here to hear about the contract. So do that, and then I'll jump on my soapbox after that.
Okay. I don't have to talk too much. Lots of things I want to say. Okay, so we're going to start with River. So as mentioned, Marilyn and I will tag team this. River is our benefits and mission services portfolio. So on the mission services side, this portfolio is really comprised of both internal and external legacy programs. You have CMIS, these are CMIS, CRIS, CRIS, and CSWP. I'll kind of explain what each of those are. But really, they're kind of in the O&M space at this point. We are trying to enhance the program in some way. We're obviously trying to increase, make sure our security posture and infrastructure are up to date. We are trying to introduce automation and also mature some of our CI/CD pipelines within that portfolio. So those are some of the things outside of kind of day-to-day operations that we're focused on here in the near future. For those of you that have ever been federal employees or been in this seat, you know that there is no greater honor than being listed on APFS as the point of contact for an acquisition. But if Kim Ray Valentine, are you in the room? So Kim Ray back there, sorry to call you out, but she is the branch chief for the mission services portfolio under STD. So yes, you can certainly reach out to me. I 9 times out of 10 will point you to Kim Ray, but she also has a team, a very awesome team of people around her. So, you know, we do want that engagement. To be honest, I can always tell when APFS gets updated because my phone starts ringing off the hook. I do want to engage with all of you. It is very hard. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of people that I engage with on a day-to-day basis, but it's difficult, to be honest. So, you know, reach out to the other support systems that we have, Ray, our PMs, and certainly, you know, don't be afraid to swing by in the hallway and say hi and find me in various engagements, et cetera. But we'll make sure that you get at least an opportunity to chat with us. All right, so a little bit about these systems. So CMIS is our Customer Management Information System. The purpose of this is to enhance the customer experience. So this is a commercial off-the-shelf tool called QFlow. You'll find it in our field office directorate offices. Think of it like a queuing system that you would see at the DMV. It does some digital signage as well, but ultimately it provides a waiting experience so folks can kind of see when they're next. It also does some statistical data and reporting, and we're piloting it. It's, as I mentioned, it's primarily in FOD, but we are piloting it in some asylum offices as well. So we also have the customer relationship interface system. So this is actually an umbrella of 6 applications and services. Just real quick, you have case status online. So this is used by customers to obtain their case information. You have change of address, which allows customers to quickly notify USCIS of any address changes. E-requests, which allows people to submit case inquiries and service requests electronically, which usually requires a timely response from USCIS personnel. You have office locator, which helps people find where the USCIS offices are. Processing times, which provides customers with case processing timelines for all their benefit types. Then you have service request management tool, which is an internal web application that provides our staff at the centers and local offices the ability to create case inquiries from customers and send them to the appropriate office for response. So again, we're working on improving our maturity on the team managed deployments in that portfolio. Obviously, integration with different applications to improve the user experience. And we are, for SRMT, we are looking to go through some modernization in that space as well. Finally, we have the customer service web portal. So this is where we manage the content for USCIS.gov and eVerified.gov. So this is DHS hosted on their web content management as a service platform. So it is Drupal. We are updating it to be updating both websites to be aligned with all the other digital websites following USWDS styling compliance. We are doing some different Drupal layout layers so that we can more efficiently update content on those websites. Obviously, we're always looking to improve and modernize outdated end user features. And I think one of the biggest things is we're utilizing user research to create persona-based user journeys throughout USCIS, including the resources and navigation paths needed for each persona type. So just want to give you all more than just what the system is and what it does, but those are the types of things that we're focused on in the next couple of years in the short term on that portfolio.
Can we go to the next slide, please? Or rapid?
Sorry, Marilyn, did you want to speak to the benefits or C3 piece of River?
Well, I wasn't going to go over each of them.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
But I mean, I think I basically said that, you know, it's really important that, you know, as we talked about earlier, the integration, improvement and evolution of user-centered design, and then enterprise solution delivery. I'll turn it back to you.
So next up is Rapid. As Chris mentioned, this is the covers the My USCIS portfolio. We're targeting 2 awardees. We'll have a very similar valuation strategy to River. So right now, for both procurements, that looks like the 2-phased approach with an advisory down select, corporate capability is factor 1, into a coding challenge and price in phase 2. Both acquisitions are going GSA Mass IT. Rapid is going unrestricted, and River is going small business set aside. That's about it. Chris?
All right. Okay, so I think historically, industry days and other engagements, we always referred to Rapid and My USCIS kind of synonymously. So I want to clarify, and I appreciate Bill for kind of going a little bit deep on the domains, but you'll notice when the RFP comes out for Rapid that we don't always reference My USCIS, right? We reference intake a lot. So into the intake space is growing significantly. Obviously, My USCIS is the biggest piece of that portfolio, but we really felt that at least internally, administratively, we, the space is growing so much that we created a new branch within Systems Delivery Division called the Intake Branch, because we anticipate that over time, it's going to grow to much more than My USCIS. So we talked a little bit about PDF intake, a little bit on some of the third-party integration stuff. There's a lot of different projects and efforts going on across the OIT space and across the agency that are related to that intake domain. And so we haven't quite figured out exactly what it's going to look like from an OIT support model, but those conversations are happening. To do another shout out, Patrick Horan, I see you back there. So Patrick is the recently announced branch chief for our intake branch within STD. So if you have any questions whatsoever, that's your guy. He doesn't live locally, but I'll send you his address. He's in Dallas area. You can hit him up anytime. So the intake space is changing, but we wanted Rapid to be flexible enough to support not only what we know in the My USCIS portfolio, but all of the future capabilities that might be brought in to support. So I think everyone hopefully is familiar with My USCIS. You can do your own research. It's a public-facing website, but it really provides a one-stop shop for users to navigate their immigration journey. It's an integrated, simplified, transparent digital experience that makes it easy for users to understand the immigration process, to apply for immigration benefits, view information about their case, and ways to contact USCIS for support. We also have a USCIS civics test study tool, the mobile application that you can find on iOS or Android. So the product strategy is pretty straightforward for My USCIS, right? It's to build a unified, personalized, and authenticated experience, to increase user engagement through account creation, reduce complexity of servicing customer needs, simplifying complex and confusing processes, and focus on usability and value to the user. So as Bill mentioned, he hit some metrics, very high visibility, very high impact. We do service millions of users, including applicants, attorneys, and organizations. And in these attorneys and organizations themselves manage thousands of clients and cases. It allows for immigration benefits to be paid for and submitted online. It allows for user notifications for like biometrics appointments or requests for evidence. It is integrated with 26 different systems and microservices. So again, to that point of working across the OIT space. It does have a fully automated CI/CD pipeline. We do about 220 deployments a week. And the portfolio does require very, very extensive cross collaboration across the organization. This program is very, very high visibility because it's public facing. Something goes wrong, everybody knows right away. The public knows, the director knows, everybody in the organization knows. So if this is something that you're interested in stepping into and running, you really, really have to be confident in your ability to deal with that pressure, to understand that oftentimes this site is how our applicants and the public perceive our support for this agency. And so when something happens, we have an outage or we have an issue, it is very, very intense, and it is a lot of pressure. Obviously, everybody from internal up to the director's office to the attorneys out in the public, they want to know what's going on. They want updates. So while you're trying to resolve a problem, you also have to constantly be reporting on the status. So it's a high stress environment. A lot of you feel confident you can do it, but just know that your reputation is on the line, just as ours is, right? So when you're coming into this portfolio, you got to have confidence that you can manage something of this size, scale, and complexity, because it is very, very important to us.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm Erica Botts. I am the CTO for USCIS, and in my group, we focus primarily on horizontal delivery. I bother the MyUSCIS or the intake portfolio most, right? Because everything lately integrates, all of the backend systems integrate with MyUSCIS. And so it is a beacon of customer experience. We focus on human-centered design. It's not just about, I've heard people think that CX is just for officers. Our CX is not just for our officers, it's for the general public. We want to make that experience as seamless as possible. I love good responsiveness to issues, but I don't want issues, right? We know that they happen, so we need good practices to mitigate those things in advance. We need to take our testing to the next level. We need to make sure that we don't have those escape defects, because the visibility on that portfolio is rather large. We've been rolling out new account types lately. For this year's H-1B season, we rolled out a new organizational account. That's the foundational account that allows for family groups to interact. It allows collaboration across the board, and we're just getting started. So I just wanted to just kind of foot stomp on the CX aspect of the intake portfolio, and also on the need to be responsive. And we don't want our users to tell us we have issues. We want to find them before it hits the public. So we want a strong focus on testing that feeds into good customer experience. The horizontal nature of having any dev lead from any team knock on your door at any time and say, I have a project that needs to go into MyUSCIS, can be daunting. So you have to be able to, prioritize work, understand where your priorities come from for the work, and be nimble. I know it's incredibly frustrating at times to start a project and have to stop a project. It's not what we would consider good agile, but it happens in the real world, right? So we need to be flexible and nimble enough to change. We're at the point now where we also need to start updating our technology. So we're gonna look at that old tech stack and start getting some of those things out. Our pipelines need to be looked at across the board. So, don't just think about, what's on the surface. You need to think about what's underneath, what's beside you, what's around you. That's going to make you a better candidate. So, leave it in there.
Hey everybody, my name is Jonathan, and I am part of the contracting office team, and my team will be supporting the Transformation Delivery Division and Maryland's team in this acquisition of ODOS 4. So I want to quickly just talk about where we're at now and how we got there, and then sort of where we're going. So right now, the ODOS 3 effort, which is currently underway, has 4 separate task orders. It was awarded against the NITAC CIO SP3 contract. And those 4 contractors are currently performing and providing approximately 40 DevSecOps teams in support of the ODOS 3 effort. As we move into ODOS 4, there will be some changes as far as volume goes. You'll see on the screen there, It's over 100 million as an estimate. It's actually significantly larger than that. But again, that would be broken down amongst multiple awards. We don't know how many awards it will be as we move forward, but we do anticipate it will be multiple awards. We did release an RFI several months ago. I got a lot of good feedback from industry, perhaps some of you here in the audience today. We do have enough information to know that we are looking to go small business. It was a total small business set aside for ODOS 3, and we look to do that again for ODOS 4. As far as evaluation factors moving forward, we don't have those fleshed out. We're still in the planning phase, sort of finalizing the acquisition strategy, but I do anticipate it will be a multi-phase evaluation like it was in the previous iteration, and there will probably be oral presentations, tech demos, that sort of thing. You can see the points of contact on there. Patricia Simon is a contracted officer. She's my lead contract specialist, so if you have specific questions moving forward regarding that contracting effort, you can reach out to her or to Brenda Palmer, who is the assigned contract specialist. I'll leave it up to Marilyn to talk some specifics about what the ODOS 4 effort will be comprised of, teams, types, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. So in ODOS 4, we'll be looking for, of course, DevSecOps teams. We'll also be bringing in some additional UX design. We'll also be looking for infrastructure teams, and that they will need to be able to integrate the case management systems into one platform. So we're looking, currently we have 3 case management systems. In the future, we're looking to potentially integrate those all into one platform. What we'll be looking for is the right expertise to develop a comprehensive strategy for the decommissioning of legacy systems as well. Our teams need to be, like we said earlier, business value is very important to us, so that's going to be a focus of it. We want you to bring innovation, creativity, and flexibility. In addition, we want you to bring any new technologies or methodologies that you have to integrate with other case management systems. UX design, very important as we move forward with this next procurement. So we'll also be looking for that UX design portion of it. And again, user experience is very important to us, so we'll be focusing on that as well.
Yeah, may I just jump in a little bit here? So I think if folks remember from ODOS, or originally we had 3 different procurements going way back. You had an all supporting transformation program and LS case management platform. So we had a LS, the primary software delivery procurement. Then we had one that was focused on design. And another one was like our platform and engineering, and those kind of got folded, let me use the right language, folded into each other along the way, and turned into ODOS. ODOS previously, I'm just going to give you a little what it is today and what it will be tomorrow. Again, separated into those 3 sort of work streams as Marilyn described. I think moving forward, I think what we're toying with, we haven't locked this down yet, but I think we're going to have some kind of combination of what we're doing for the design group, our design team, or design work stream, is explicitly lay out that requirement for each team to have a designer, probably have a mixture of maybe treated it the same way we did with the tech leads, where every couple of teams we're going to exercise maybe a UX design lead as well, or maybe we'll just have them optional cleanse. Not really sure yet, but the idea is for these designers to be embedded in our DevSecOps teams, have some leads that can go across or work across different teams, and then also create maybe like a community of practice, essentially help to standardize, the design practices within TDD, work across other delivery divisions. But essentially, instead of having sort of like a design team that we exercise as an individual CLIN, I think we'll try to pull that into each dev team. And then I think we'll continue to have the sort of infrastructure or platform engineering team as a separate CLIM. But what we're doing differently moving forward is laying out some specific tasks that talk to, as Marilyn described, integration of case management systems and services into a single sort of case management into the case management platform. And by that I mean we've talked about decommissioning legacy claims. We're going to actually put that explicitly in or some language in that procurement that talks about this integration team, or this infrastructure and integration team that's responsible for strategy around decommissioning, working with River, that procurement and that vendor to actually decommission that legacy C3 application, maybe pulling over bits of Benefits Hub as necessary into the LS case management platform. And then the same thing with our global case management system. Same thing, just leveraging services that work that our business partners like, and leaving those intact while again leveraging like we're doing today, really the LS case management platform. So just to summarize, instead of those three sort of work streams, the design will be really pulled into or integrated with our DevSecOps teams, and then we'll have that infrastructure and integration sort of work stream. So 2 instead of 3. That makes sense.
And then I'll just add, so some of those changes that are under consideration, there will be a draft solicitation that will go out. We'll go to sam.gov, and so you'll have a chance to see those before the actual solicitation hits and provide feedback to us on some of those changes that David and Marilyn were talking about.
Definitely want to leave some time for Q&A for sure before everybody starts to beat feet. Sorry. One other piece I wanted to pull Erica in here that you already talked about, horizontal delivery. Again, with ODOS, and I think you're seeing this across all of our delivery divisions and in operations as well. The concept of horizontal delivery, product and service delivery. Again, these are primarily teams that support, again, traditionally been supporting the LS case management platform, but they deliver products that folks can use, end-to-end products. They may have to integrate with other systems and services, but the work that's coming out of TDDs has always been centered around a product. When I say a product, I mean, obviously, our workloads are very form-centric, but you might have something like adjustment of status, which can be multiple forms. It's centered around the way in which people engage with USCIS, how they apply, and this is part of the work that ODOS is centered around. Is also this integrating or working with the concept of this LTI out of the CTO's shop.
So LTI is the lead technical integrator, and the whole point of that role is to integrate across the environment. So it looks at, how do we get it across the finish line? It's a person that's a little bit in your space, right? Like they ask the hard questions, but it's with the point of delivering a total product, making sure there are no gaps in capability. When you work in a silo, you don't see what's beside you. We have got to be less siloed and be more horizontal in that in our quest to deliver quality products. So we have a few LTIs on the board. We also have PMs that function as integrators in their space as well. So it's when it will take the teams working together to let that person know when it's time to go and knock on a friend's door, right? When it's time to ask for help. I think the beauty of horizontal delivery is it also creates opportunity to share technology and to share understanding of products. The US immigration system is kind of complex. Just when you think you've got it figured out, they add a new form, they add a new rule, things change rapidly. So we have to, be open to the fact that, somebody has experience in one area or the other. We also want to focus on like not building something that's bespoke or boutique every time we need to build something, right? We want technology that we can build on top of, we can expand. So, we're looking for enterprise solutions that aren't just for one group, but could be leveraged across multiple groups. I think that's super important. I think customer experience is also very important because many of the initiatives that Chris spoke about, one of them was, one of the CX projects was personalized processing times, the ability to get your case status rapidly. Well, where does that come from? It comes from Ellis, right? It comes from the backend system. So there's all kind of integration that has to happen in order to make that process work. And it should be seamless to the individual. And if there's a problem, I need to be able to identify where it is. Is it on the front end? Is it with the backend system? And you do that with clean code. We do that with partners that are willing to speak up, a can-do-it attitude, not a blame game mentality, but one in which recognizes that this is an enterprise that supports USCIS. So we're definitely looking for less silos, more partnership, more horizontal delivery, and your partners here in government are definitely willing to help with that journey as well. It's definitely not falling on you, but it is the culture in which we are trying to drive here at USCIS now. Yeah, and we don't play with new cool toys because they're cool, right? We need a purpose for technology. So I know that there's a lot in the news. Bill mentioned that I was our AI official. We have to, I like AI just as much as the next person, but I want it to be the right thing for our enterprise. I also hate to break the news. It is documentation heavy. Has anybody seen the new OMB memo, the latest memo about the AI requirements? Every AI use case used in the federal government needs to be disclosed. That means we have to tell the truth. We have to tell those things. And even if a use case is sensitive or isn't for public information, it needs to be written in a way that it can be put out there for the American people. So we have got to be smart in how we are operating. We really want new technology. We want to build efficiencies. We want to have great experiences for our customers, but we also have to remember that our customers have to know that their information is protected, and we have to do our part to disclose that information. So, if a cool new thing is the right thing for the job, we are 100% open to it. But if it's cool for the sake of being cool, just keep that in mind when you're coming up with solutions. We have a good track record here at USCIS of being innovative and being solution oriented. And we don't want to mess that up by getting bogged down in cool stuff. I like to do cool stuff.
So maybe the questions. Oh, look at that. Already have jumping up here.
Hey, David. Hey, Chris, and the board. WSIM got a little mention. I've been the tech lead there for a long time. It's been a pleasure to be hosting the USCIS.gov website. Looking to do more with my USCIS. In that vein, a lot of the tech challenges and the tech at USCIS has always involved the pipelines leveraging around Jenkins. And as much as we love to hate Jenkins and hate to love Jenkins, it's feels like a risk as an industry partner to try and use a different tool that's not necessarily within the USCIS landscape. What are opinions and thoughts on tech challenges leveraging technologies that are, just not in the space, at least within USCIS right now, but are certainly like valid things that could be and could transform USCIS in the future?
Sure. So maybe there's different opinions, but I think when we do coding challenges, like we're not looking for you to show up with an entirely new tech stack, right? We want you to understand what our tech stack is and what's in the realm of possibility. I think we do allow the flexibility to insert, some emerging technologies or be flexible in what ultimately comes in, but within reason, right? So I mean, we can't have an entirely new tech stack and that be a realistic thing that we could ever implement, day one in a program. So
you're spot on. I mean, obviously we're looking for folks who can come in to our environment, hit the ground running as quickly as possible. Mission doesn't end, right? Problems still occur. So I think it's while it may be ideal, I think to Chris's point, within reason, obviously follow the RFP, the rules apply. But I think we have opportunities once folks are on board to be able to introduce new technology. First, and Erica was talking about it, and she'll talk about it some more after this panel. But I think we need folks who are really focused primarily. This gets to like the practical implementation versus nirvana. Yeah. Got to be able to come in, work within the constraints that we have today, and hit the ground running as quickly as possible. And so having tech challenges using our technology, our tech stack within our pipelines is the way to do it. If that makes sense.
No, that answers the question. Thank you. I had a follow-up on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So I mean, like you said, the technology stack will be in the work statement that's inside the RFP when it goes out, and that's what you're going to be evaluating on. The tech demo will be pulled from those capabilities that are represented in the work statement. So I would say just make sure if you have any questions about that or you want to propose something different, that's when sort of that Q&A period in the solicitation. Just know that anything you ask is generally going to be posted for everybody. So if it's something proprietary, something unique or novel that you don't want out there, just be careful in asking that. But definitely ask if you're unsure before you go into the tech demo and try to show something different.
Thank you. I had a follow-up in relation to ODOS.
Could I interrupt? We have about 10 minutes left on this session. We got 2 more people asking questions. Submit the question to us. We'll get your response, and we got some in the Q&A box. So we want to try to maximize questions here for this panel before we run out of time.
Will do.
Thank you.
Well, crap, I had 2 questions. All right. my first one, hi, Peter Frith from Manica Systems. My first one's for Chris, actually. This is a little forward-looking, but after the award of River, the distribution of work, is that going to be handled similar to what we did for Speed, or is it going to be more traditional around focused on a specific system or application?
So, I can speak for the mission services, and then I'll maybe speak for Marilyn, but let her chime in. So, Speed, it was 5 vendors that supported that entire portfolio of work. I think we like that. We saw a lot of innovation and different perspectives, but it was also challenging to have, for example, 4 vendors in a single portfolio. So we're trying to make some adjustments on the River side and the Rapid side, right? So Rapid, we're intending to award to 2 unrestricted. On the River side, we want it to be a little bit more specific. So we're hoping to have 2 vendors in the mission services space, and that's what they focus on, right? And then also two potentially 3 vendors in the benefits space, and that's what they focus on. Now, the contract does allow for the flexibility of teams to be deployed across both portfolios, but we were hoping for a little bit more dedicated focus going forward.
Mike, I have a. All right, this one's for Patrick. Have you considered including a price range to kind of eliminate price as a factor in the bids like you used to do like 5 or 6 years ago?
You're talking about an affordability range?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I think, God, my time perception is time is off, but you used to actually provide a range. It was all bids will fall between 100 and 120, and basically as long as you fell in that range, price wasn't a factor. So allowing for more focus on the technical capability. I was curious if that's been considered for.
So we do have to evaluate price, but we do plan on using an affordability range on both River and Rapid. I think the PIL was mentioned earlier in today's session. Affordability range is a PIL technique. So we will provide a range. It may be fairly broad, but it gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So you can adjust your prices accordingly. If anyone saw the Epic solicitation go out, that also used an affordability range. Give you an idea of how large of a range we may publish.
So very large range. Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry for all the questions.
Hi, it's Lisa again. You said you're still figuring out the team structure for ODOS, so may I throw out a couple of suggestions? Okay. Have a design lead per stage of the case processing workflow, because you'll probably have multiple teams assigned to each stage. And then also consider having centralized support for user research and analytics, as well as the design system and possibly content strategy as well. And David, you seem to be indicating that the product managers are going to be more workflow oriented as well. I would hope so, because there needs to be communication channels that work that way all the way through. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
No, thanks, Lisa. I like that. I think, you know, the idea we talked about, we're toying with ideas. Nothing's locked down yet, but the community of practice type of I would say a model that speaks to what you're just talking about, being able to centralize these designs, or even to the point of our process flows. We have different BAs, and they'll each have their different. It's not necessarily design practice, but essentially they all have their own kind of a standard. They save it in a wiki site on their team side, and maybe look a little different than another team that's building on another product. And so I think the idea is to have some of that standardization, because there's efficiencies that we gain through some standardization, right? And I think we've kind of gotten away from where it obviously where it makes sense. But yeah, no, thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
So we have a few questions in the chat. I'm going to try to get through as many of them as we can in the last couple of minutes here. So first, are you planning on releasing a draft RFP for Rapid and River?
I knew that one was coming. At this time, we are not planning to release a draft for River. Rapid is TBD.
For Rapid, if you do you anticipate industry will have time to provide feedback on the draft?
That would be the goal. Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to take some Q&A and incorporate it into our solicitation.
Patrick, can you talk a little bit about the timelines for those and whether or not they are planning to be released at the same time or at different times?
We expect both solicitations will go out in the next 1 to 2 months, and they're tracking very similarly right now. River is slightly ahead of Rapid, but they are a very similar track.
River and Rapid proposals have company level security clearance requirements. Will the agency sponsor one if we have a solution? Not sure if we might need to circle back on that question. Sure. River and Rapid proposals have company level security clearance requirements. Will the agency sponsor one if we have a solution? We can request more information and circle back on that question.
We can respond in writing.
Sure. Lastly, could you elaborate more on mission focused coding challenge? What's meant by that?
Not 100% sure I understand the question, but so there's two different approaches to coding challenges, right? It could be something that's relatively generic that doesn't seem like it fits the mission space, but the problems that you're solving do naturally fit into the same types of problems that we're solving here. And then there's an approach where you have a very specific solution that you want solved that in theory, if it's a great solution, you could almost deploy it, day one upon award. So two different approaches. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not, but.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have time for just one more question in the room.
All right, thank you. Hi, Jeff Smith with Ventera. A couple questions on the tech challenge. I've seen remote challenges followed by orals, in-person challenges. Can you talk about what you're thinking you might do and also how you might evaluate those tech challenges?
I assume for River and Rapid.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, River and Rapid.
So we are anticipating a two-part challenge. So a remote coding challenge, full sprint, so 2 weeks to work on the challenge, and then come in for maybe it'll be a virtual or in-person second half where we'll do a presentation and Q&A.
All right, very good. Thank you. And as far as evaluating, anything you can say about how you anticipate evaluating it?
Other than the factors, no, I can't go into more detail this time. So corporate capability, factor one.
Yeah. Okay.
Code challenge and price.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, I think we're all set here with questions. Thank you guys.
Are you gonna wait? You want me to come off and come back?
No.
Oh, you guys all had
Hello, everybody. We're not done. We have one more panel. Can you take your seats, please, so we can start the last panel of the day?
All right, we're going to move into our next panel discussion. Actually, you guys just come up on stage. That'll work.
Can I get you to take your seats so we can get started, please?
All right, thank you. So our next panel is going to be discussing AES, EIOSS, and NEON.
Good afternoon. I have not really spoken into a microphone much, but I'm Laura Gross. I am the contracting officer for AES2. That's Architecture and Engineering Services. It's a re-procurement that supports both the CTO and enterprise infrastructure. Contract is currently awarded to Mantech Advanced Systems. It is a hybrid contract type, both firm fixed price and T&M cleanse. We're looking to compete the next procurement on GSA Alliant 2. I anticipate that it'll follow a similar contract type with a majority of the cleanse being T&M. You see the value is over $100 million. It will be a base and 4 one-year option periods. It's estimated that the solicitation release date is July 22nd and estimated award date January, February of 2025. It's currently in the stages of planning, so there's much still to be approved and reviewed. It's limited to what it is I can commit to right now. But I'm anticipating an advisory down select, with phase 1 being corporate experience, phase 2 including some component of oral presentations that will discuss technical approach through some scenario-based questions, also looking into retention and staffing. I also anticipate including a staffing model for contractors per each task area. And then also in phase 2 will be a small business participation evaluation criteria that I'm hoping to align to our small business goals for the fiscal year as we would have them at the time of solicitation. And then price would be a final factor. At this point, I'll turn it over to John for the program.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rob McMullen, Deputy CIO for Operations. I don't know if y'all noticed, I try to yin and yang with David. He did no tie jacket. I'm doing tie, no, or whatever, you can figure it out. Yeah. So I've been in the government I'm working on my 33rd year now, and a lot of change. I've been with DHS since the very beginning, even before the beginning, when DHS, the year before when it was being stood up, I was part of the team that took U.S. Customs Service and INS, stuck them in the YAHTSE, and rolled out CIS, ICE, and CBP. And I didn't realize, I was still kind of young, how much the DHS mission would mean to me. It became so much more than what I ever thought a job would be for me. So just so proud to be at DHS. I spent 28 years at a different agency, most of that with DHS, and then slid over to CIS here the last 4 years. So before we jump into AES, just kind of wanted to kick off like a high level overview of operations in general and how that will tie into the contracts as we go forward. I'm a big sports guy. Played sports, watched sports, coached sports my entire life. And as far as operations go, I know David's heard this joke several times, but I'm going to give it one more shot here. Operations, we're like the offensive line in football. Our whole job is to stay out of the limelight, to keep things working, make the quarterback, Mr. Blair, as pretty as he can possibly be, and try our best to not get a flag. A flag in operations perspective is a user can't do his job. Whether that's a system outage or a laptop is broken, doesn't really matter. And so that's kind of what my my goal is to keep out of that. So at USCIS, since I've been here, when I first got here, it was right when COVID started, and we were a real 9-to-5 kind of shop, across the country, but 9 to 5 in general. Very little weekend work, and right away, Southwest Border initiatives start cropping up. OAW, our humanitarian effort with refugee and asylum processing, OCON. We all of a sudden went from closing the laptop at 5 and going home and doing whatever you do, to, hey, you know what, we got to make sure that our environment is running 24/7. That's something that normally is a growth period, and at CIS it happened, basically in the last 4 years rapidly, and it's been a big change, and I really wanted to thank our partners that are on our contracts today that have stepped up. Our whole new environment of a remote work. What does that mean? How does that work? When I was talking to Bill before I came over to CIS, just even before he released the the job opening, you know, I kept hearing, oh, we got so much money over here, it's great. I come here, you know, fee funded, we're in COVID, nobody's getting paid, you know, we're not processing anybody. I'm like, what money? You know, within the first 2 months, I get a furlough letter. I was like, oh crap, you know, what happened? But, you know, obviously with our industry partners and our government staff, you know, we quickly were able to pivot and get operations running again remotely any way we could to make that happen. And I did really want to, you know, thank you guys, you know, for doing that. You know, to me, our operations, it's like I'm going to throw another sports analogy. It's like when they put the pitch clock in baseball, it's still baseball, but it's a quicker, more efficient, you know, sport now, if you like baseball. So now here we are, you know, 3 of the 4 biggest operations contracts that I have are coming to, you know, recompetes between this year and next year. And so it's an opportunity for us to partner with industry and really take your grandma's operations, which is very reactionary, you know, oh, flag goes off, hey, looks like something's going down, or hey, we take a phone call from the help desk, hey, Ellis isn't working, okay, to something to where we're actually seeing it before they see it and potentially have the ability to fix it before it becomes a bigger problem. And that to me is what I'm driving towards, you know, and when I talk about you know, this remote work, you know, virtually being able to fix everything. People working at home. Listen, I don't want to be the geek squad. You know, I'm not going to people's houses to fix their Wi-Fi issues with their local internet provider. You know, our job is how can we effectively manage the operating environment remotely? And that's where I really need industry to lay in and continue to help us with some best practices out there as we continue to evolve. I think I'll save that for our AES stuff. I'm going to go ahead and before I turn it over to Eric, I'm going to leave you with one more sports quote. I'm going to have to read it. This is from Coach Lombardi. The achievement of an organization are the results of the combined effort of each individual. Each individual in this case is a combination of government and industry. It's the partnership. It's everybody that feeds on that mission I talked about at the start of my little spiel here. That, you know, that drive to effectively, you know, safeguard our country, at the same time allow immigration to continue to happen effectively and safely. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Erica.
So I'm going to begin with a houseplant analogy. Okay, so I'm not. Okay, just play. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AES and also the role of the CTO's office. So it's very similar to, you know, take everything I said in the last panel, ditto. It applies over here as well. We are looking to work horizontally. The beauty of my career here at USCIS is that I've had so many jobs and gotten to wear so many hats. I can really see when the business part of app development happens and operation syncs beautifully, man, do we put out some great products, right? And so we can only do that if we're working horizontally, we're working together. And so we want to carry that theme on into our operations contracts, especially our AES contract. Our AES contract is split between 2 different groups. Actually, is it 2 or 3? Wait, 2? Okay, split between 2 groups. And so a lot of the architects and engineers are located in the CTO shop, and a lot of those same people are located in EID. So it takes a person that is willing to, you know, break down the silos, walk across the hall, extend a hand, and get the products done. We're looking for rapid fire solutions that make sense. We're definitely still looking for enterprise solutions that are not boutique, not bespoke. We want things that we can build on. And we want to build in some We want to build in some Groundhog Day if possible, right? Like everything doesn't have, if it doesn't have to be reactionary, why should it be? I would love to give people a boring job, right? Like monitor the network. And we do that when we are building in safeguards, when we have automation in place. We're using our technology to the best to make the mundane and routine, the mundane and routine. It is exactly what Rob said. If it is working the way it's supposed to, nobody really notices, right? And it's a great line of defense. The bad guys don't score on us, and everybody gets to go home at the end of the day, which we like. I will say that in this space, we're looking to incorporate new ideas like Google's SRE, so site reliability engineering. So there's going to be a heavy focus on monitoring. Also bring in, we have lots of tools at USCIS. I will just say that. Anybody that's worked here knows, like, we have almost everything. We need to use those tools effectively, right? And we need to make sure that they can become enterprise solutions that can be that are user friendly. If we're spinning up a dashboard for everything and those dashboards don't say much, what's the use of that dashboard, right? So we need real data that we can show quantitative and qualitative measures of our success. And I would love to keep the environments going all the time. And then a quick spiel about AI. We are leaning in with the department in the space of generative AI. But again, we want those AI tools to be the right tool for the job. If we can accomplish that thing with existing technology that we already own, let's do that. And then let's talk about how we want to expand and set the vision for the future and how these new tools can help us get there. So happy to partner with any of you to do those things. That's it for me.
All right, to steal a sports reference from Rob, I'm pinch hitting today for Andy, who couldn't be here today. So I will give a quick overview of NEON. We are in the market research phase, so not much can be said right now. Our phases, factors, set aside, contract, etc. are all TBD. That's about it from me.
All right.
Over to OIT.
All right, so with NEON, very kind of touching on what I talked about before, NEON is our desktop support in the field. It is our service desk, 1-800 help me, kind of thing. The way we do it today is very outdated. Now I'm saying it's outdated because we are making changes, but it's been slow in that progress. But as we look, Bill mentioned it, growing a tree. So 5 years from now, I'm really looking at how do we make help desk support much more self-help. And again, trust me, I'm one of those guys who's constantly 0, 0, 0. When I just want to talk to somebody, still have that. But at the same time, if there's a lot of stuff that we can do. And, earlier we talked about, I can't remember who it was, we hired 4,000 new employees just in the last couple of years. A lot of this, I've got a lot of gray in my beard, so I'm the guy that needs to walk away at some point. And some of these, the younger crowd, and I hate to use the term younger, but, hungrier, people that they're very tech savvy. Bill touched on citizen development. The more tools that we can give people, the better off we're going to be. So as we've continued to drive towards some of these changes, I can't thank industry enough for, number one, we put an RFI out, we got a number of responses. Thank you very much for that. And really the partnership that we're going to have for people that have done this outside of USCIS, where they've taken a service desk or a desktop support type environment and made it more virtual, and we're looking for that partnership. There's a few items that we're going to kind of touch on. I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer LaChance, the branch chief of Desktop Technologies. I told her I was going to butcher that title, but I think I got it. Sorry, Jennifer.
Okay, hi, my name is Jennifer LaChance, and I'm the branch chief for Desktop Technologies, and I'm also the PM currently for NEON 2. What we're looking for is that virtual environment, more of like self-help kind of environment with the, live chat, remote desktop support. It's more of a user-centric approach is what we're looking for the users to be able to go to knowledge-based articles and, do it themselves, basically. And that's what we're looking at the future of what NEON is supposed to look like. So that's why we're asking industry right now, to give us some guidelines, some help, some assistance, that you have some lessons learned, whatever, so we can get out of that business of pressing that number. So.
All right, we have another one. We have current contract right now doing operations support called EIOSS, which is the Enterprise Operations and Infrastructure Support Services. It's still about a year out from its competition, but we are already looking forward to that competition and changing kind of the way we operate that system, or all of our systems. As you can imagine, that contract was awarded 4 years ago, and 4 years ago, we still had presence in 2 DHS data centers. 4 years ago, we rode exclusively over DHS comms to all the various sites around the country. Now I've got an SD-WAN, okay? 4 years from now, I'm going to have an SD-LAN. Okay, things are changing. Eric is exactly right on the monitoring side. It's no longer enough to have a 24/7 support team sitting there waiting for the green light to turn red, okay, so that you can get up and figure out what's going on. Now it's very detailed, very intricate, and we've got responses for every possible solution. Our main alerting infrastructure was somebody calling the help desk and saying, is it still working? So we would respond to that phone call. We're doing a lot better today. But that innovation, that modernization, that automation that needs to be put in place is now all going to be factored into this competition, factored into this new contract. This is the unglamorous, is that a word? Unglamorous? Part of IT, in that we do the weekly administration of servers. We make sure that all the PCs are baselined correctly. We look at network, upgrades and infrastructure to their OS. So it's the day in, day out routine. We'll get a phone call from one of the program offices where we may have to start and restart a service. But there's 1,000 things that we have to do in order to sustain the infrastructure that David and his team put in place. So that's what this contract is for, are those behind the scenes invisible people that keep the engine running, regardless of power outages, fiber seeking backhoes, weather issues, you name it. That's how we respond, and that's how we manage that infrastructure. We're a good 12 months away from doing an RFP release. With the modernization, with the skill set enhancement that we're going to be anticipating on the next contract, obviously the price is going to change a little bit, but all of that is TBD at this point. So this is more of just a heads up, it's coming, but be on the lookout. Thank you.
Well, at this point, we turn it over to some Q&A.
stand between them and the front door.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Uh-oh.
Oh, David. I'm sorry.
It wasn't you, it was the other guy.
Oh, very good. So Joe Yancey, Mantech, was curious if there would be any expected prohibition or conflict of pursuing all or more than one of the contracts that were just discussed.
Yeah, that was a condition the last time we ran the two EIOSS and AES together. There will not be those provisions this time, mostly because they've been offset. So.
Very good, thank you. I'll keep an eye out for the fiber-seeking backhoes as well in the parking lot.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Hi.
Lawrence Hart with CGI. Is there going to be a draft of the AES solicitation?
There will be a draft. There's planning to be one. Draft PWS has been shared with the aligned contractors. As soon as other decisions become clearer, then I plan to release an update to that.
Thank you.
Hi, Nazanin Golosorki with SOCI. I have a question on ACE. What cloud adaptation model are you trying to use or would like to have?
Do you mean our current cloud environment and where we think we're going?
Yes.
All right. So, right now we are an AWS shop.
Yes.
But the landscape is changing. A lot of the LLMs may require us to have other cloud providers within our boundary. So we definitely are open to a multi-cloud solution. And we are, but as I said, it's got to be for a reason. It's not just because it's cool. It's because it's the right thing to do for our environment.
Another quick question. On the requirement, it sounds like it is oriented more toward architectural rather than security. Didn't see anything about security on that, on the draft.
So these are, this is our primary architectural and engineering contracts, but security is first. We have separate security contracts, but the foundation of all of our contracts should be security. Like, just because it's not explicitly stated, we should start with security.
Just to follow up, I think CIO McElhaney kind of mentioned that everything that we do, security is just inherently built in, to the point that I don't even talk about it anymore because it's just ingrained in what we do.
But we have to make sure we do it.
Correct.
Right. Can't forget about it to the point that we forget about it.
So what is your stage that you're looking for cloud migration? What stage of cloud migration?
We are a cloud native shop. USCIS is 100% cloud native. We are even out of the data center, right?
Yeah,
we don't even have a data center. Yep. So we are 100% cloud.
Thank you.
And we have hybrid cloud, right?
Okay.
We have
Thank
some
you.
edge, but yeah, in the cloud.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello again. I have a question regarding AES. AES has been out for a while. Its technologies obviously have changed a lot. And furthermore, the AES contract will live for a good bit of time. Is there a roadmap associated to what kind of hopes, expectations, dreams are in that, are coming in your mind for AES, or you're hoping to at the very least meet as milestones within AES, and are those shareable today?
I didn't quite follow that. Were you talking about contract milestones, or were you talking about milestones on
Delivery. Yeah. I'm like you, man. I'm an operations guy. I like the day-to-day matters, keeping the lights on and everyone happy, kind of thing. Those technologies that help you do that, or at the very least, the goals you have that the technologies enable you to meet. Those are the kinds of milestones slash kind of roadmap objectives I'm talking about?
I think you've knocked on the dreamer's door. So we're definitely looking to, as I mentioned before, we have lots of tools. We would love to get to the point where we can have consistent standards that optimize our performance here. So if we could get, a couple of things that help us monitor our systems better. We want to get into AI ops. We're definitely looking to, honestly, we're looking for a partner to help us dream together, right? We want to know when it's the right time to move to that next thing. We have the principles of, SRE to really get started with. Like we're just kind of scratching the surface there. We've had the tools here in the environment for a while, but we need to optimize those tools. We need to make sure that our developers know that these are the standard things that we have. As far as the security piece, they need to know what it takes to bring things into this environment and have it standardized. And that means we need to have an environment that is well planned out. So I think we're definitely looking to, we kind of know where we're going right now. We don't want to be reactionary. We want to get to Groundhog Day. We want things to be easy and repeatable. We're looking at, there's all kinds of things. Instead of patching every weekend, what if we're just upgrading, right? Like no longer patching. So there are all kinds of concepts that we're interested in and want to move towards. But it's got to be the right time, and we're looking for partners to help us on that journey.
That's lovely to hear. Thank you. I had one follow-up question left over from, I forgot the name of the contract, OBOD, Old Ellis. It was about OpenShift. I know OpenShift is a mainstay within the operational program there. Is there the expectation to continue operating on OpenShift permanently without like any serious thoughts of moving over to something else like managed Kubernetes or whatever else flavor of Kubernetes that's out there, or is it pretty much going to OpenShift expectation?
We have Kubernetes in the environment. You name it, we probably got it. Mm-hmm. It is a matter of picking the right technology for what we're doing. I will say, look at products that are FedRAMP high if you want to introduce new technology to us, and then explain the why. Products that are easily adopted, that don't take a lot of ramp up, that I don't need a master's degree to know how to use, are things we're looking for. Also things that aren't going to require huge migration. This enterprise does not sleep. And so me going down for a weekend to move to a new tool is not something I'm looking forward to.
Well, plus another piece of that Erica mentioned earlier, our toolbox is pretty massive. So when we look to implement new tools, it's implementing something that makes sense to the environment and also gets rid of stuff. I mean, it's key. I can't just keep throwing additional things on top so that when we're looking at the big massive screen, although we're going to go virtual, so it won't be the same, but I don't need 10 tools showing me stuff. Everything should be really integrated and reduced down. So that also should be part of any kind of tools or solutions that the industry brings to us, is how does that help shrink and strengthen our environment?
Thanks. I think that answers my question. I wanted to confirm because in the description, it explicitly said on OpenShift. So I wanted to make sure that wasn't a hard requirement necessarily. Okay, great. Thank you.
So my question was around leveraging AI for IT operations. I understand that from an AI perspective, you are walking before, running but from IT operations, how are you using it for capacity planning or self-healing infrastructure or monitoring? And what is the scope of AI in operations?
So we have, AI is not new to USCIS. If you go out to AI.gov, we have use cases out there that we have for predictive tools. We have machine learning that helps us process our cases more efficiently. And we have, like I said, just started to scratch the surface on our monitoring tools using AI. AI in the regular kind, not the new kind, is already here. We are looking to see what generative AI can do for us. And I mean, you guys got to know this isn't the first stop on the tour, right? Like we're just scratching the surface there, but there's something else and it's already out there. So we need to make sure that we're jumping in the right place and investing in the right place. So that's what we're looking to partner with you guys on. We don't want to, we don't want you to tell us like, today is the day, buy it all, this is it. And then 2 weeks later, there's a shift and we're stuck with this outdated service or product.
Line was short. How we jump up? Sahed Singh, still with Vitus. Looking at data governance, I'm just curious, and maybe Erica, this is maybe a little directed towards you. Are you guys seeing that the vision for data governance and that overarching agency model for what governance is going to look like for various applications? Do you see that intersecting within each of these procurements? So each initiative is kind of building out their own model, or is there an enterprise model that's being put in place first that these projects and then the LTI will kind of work towards integrating across CIS?
Oh, Nirvana is what you speak of. So, data governance, we have a strong desire for data governance. We partner very well with our CDO shop on data governance. The truth is we're still working towards it. We think we have enterprise ways, but we have all kinds of legacy data hanging around that we still have to be able to deal with. And so we of course want a security first, data first approach when we're doing our development. But we also want to make sure we at least know the standards so that if we can't hit it perfectly, we can at least get really close, or we can figure out ways to use those enterprise data standards when we're building out things.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A box. They both pertain to NEON. So we'll start with the first question. NEON 2. Will USCIS be meeting the industry to vet potential IT orchestration and automation solution for help desk?
Repeat that one more time.
Sure. Yeah, repeat that, please.
Will USCIS be meeting with industry to vet potential IT orchestration and automation solution for help desk?
Yes. Yeah, I think that we kind of went, I think we covered that one. Yes.
The second question reads, can you provide any new details on the status of NEON procurement and what current items the government is having difficulty with achieving?
No further details can be provided right now.
We're still in the discovery phase.
Okay, look like we do have two more questions in the room here, so go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, Michael Kuiper, Vistant. Do a lot of stuff for USCID internationally and really excited. Thanks for this very helpful day today. There's a lot of talk about FedRAMP and some certifications that we have to get. Can you talk about maybe in the future what we should be looking toward in certifications so that we're competitive? Like government certifications from a cybersecurity aspect?
I guess I'm trying to follow. We're required to have everything that we run is running on FedRAMP certified clouds or platforms or whatever. So are you asking, are we going away from that, or?
No, like the subcontractors, what level of certification on the FedRAMP would they need to be, or you're just following the federal guidelines as much as possible?
On that, we just follow the federal guidelines.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Aslam Nawab Zada from ECS. I have a question for Erica.
From a CTO office perspective, what are your main goals for the EES2 program?
So my main goals, you know what, honestly, I'm looking for a good partner, and I'm looking for a good partner internally, and I'm looking for a good partner to work across the division. I think almost a big chunk of our work is making sure that we build things that support our developers. So if we're doing really cool things with the infrastructure that leaves our app developers behind, we haven't done our jobs, right? So we need to make sure that we're rolling out things that make sense. We've had this narrative that one of our applications is always slow, it's always down. What can you help me do to fix that application, right? One of the reasons we moved to SD-WAN was for that very reason, right? So we're looking for innovative ideas like that. We're looking for partnership. We're looking for folks that aren't looking to pit one division against the other, right? We want people that want to work with us and want to work across. And when a stray, business person finds their way into your area, help them understand, that they don't need to redo the environment to get the thing that they want, but, we have the tools and the folks that can help them here. There's just a personal story for me. I used to work on the Ellis team for a very long time. And the Ellis team created this wonderful service, right? And all I heard when I was there was, wow, this tool was amazing. And when I moved over to the CTO shop, I discovered that it was the back-end app development team that built the underlying technology to make that happen. That's powerful, right? So it's the things that we take for granted every day. If you're doing your job well, it's almost a thankless job because people forget about you. But man, does it make a big difference. So, when our app teams knock on your door, I want you to welcome them in with open arms. Also make sure that we're building an enterprise that is consistent. I do not want, again, a bunch of bespoke, one-offs. We need to be building towards enterprise patterns. We need to look for ways to cut money where we can so that we can invest that money in other ways to boost our technology stack.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no further questions in the Q&A box. Let's open it. Okay, so we would like to open it up to just some general Q&A now. So again, another opportunity before you leave to ask the question that you're pondering and trying to decide whether or not you should stand up to the mic or not. I think we had a point now. I'll run the mic to you if you want to not come up to the stand. So again, we want to encourage you in the last 30 minutes or so to ask that question before you leave today.
And they're not just for us. That whole group over there is ready, willing, and able. No.
I do want to foot stomp a little bit on what Erica said, and then come on up. About reducing cost. We spend a lot of time. We're very, very transparent with the USCIS organization as a whole on what we spend, and operations spend in industry is higher than what we spend here at CIS, and I still think it's too much because, again, we're behind the scenes, we make things happen, but our customers are the different directorates. They want to buy teams, they want more capabilities from David's group. So the cheaper we can get stuff operating and reduce that overall cost, more that cost, as she mentioned, can flow into the pretty stuff that David does. So, that's kind of, I think, where Erica was heading. So I'm sorry, please.
So this is just a general question, and I probably know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there any news on awarding First Source 3 for DHS this year? The contract? Is there any news on awarding First Source 3, the DHS procurement contract this year?
We have no update at this time. Unfortunately, we are anxiously awaiting any news on FirstSource 3, as I'm sure you are as well.
I wanted to make a comment and maybe not necessarily have a conversation, but challenge on the cost savings. You know, we talk about saving costs across the board at DHS, regardless of what mission we're supporting and what organization we're with. Cost saving, and you kind of mentioned it, it's more about cost value improvement, right? Where did my money do better than it did otherwise versus just saving money? It's easy to save money. It's a lot harder to put your money in the right place, which is I think what you're referring to when you're talking about cost saving in regards to the example you leverage. But looking at it from that perspective, and now that I've opened that window of better cost application, does that kind of change or leave any other comments as far as if you could use your money better, where would you put that money?
So when I talk about saving money, I mean that we often throw money out of the window, right? So we do need to save money. We also need to put our money where it can maximize effort. So if I'm buying another development team, but that team's work in progress, they're only fully staffed for half of the sprint and I'm not getting the full sprint worth, why would I buy another team? The only way I know that is if we're taking, we have good metrics on what they're delivering. So we need to make sure that we're investing our money in the right places. Also, cloud is not free. Our cloud bill is a huge cost. Generative AI right now is pay by the drink. So I need cost savings or cost avoidance so that I can reinvest that money into other things like my cloud infrastructure and into my AI workloads.
Yeah, cloud definitely isn't free. You get a lot of value for the money you spend in cloud, but definitely not free. I remember seeing the bill one time at Ellis and my eyes grew big and I became a bigger adult about how much money gets spent in places. So
in data also, Databricks, think about how much you spend there. So, we have to make sure we're putting our money in the right places. We have to make sure that that's why I say I'm not necessarily looking for cool. I'm looking for effective. I'm looking for the right tool for the job. And then if that happens to be the coolest, newest thing, that's okay. That was worth the money. I want to make sure we're making good investment decisions.
Speaking of, I'm sorry. One more question, I promise. Last one. Speaking of data, when I was at Ellis, there was, and I'm sure this is the same for USCIS and other groups everywhere, making sure everyone has access to the same data pool, right? Like whatever it might be, a transaction or whatever. Everyone needs that. Some group may need it for another reason, another group needs it for another reason, but data tends to get replicated versus a single data store. That's a problem always and forever, and everyone's solving that. From a machine learning perspective and from an AI perspective, having one sum of data to leverage to use to build models is a much better approach than replicating data or may not having the full scope of data that another group has. So data allocation in your data lake discussion is really important. Is that something that's at the top of the priority list when it comes to anything regarding AI and data, or are we still kind of exploring that?
I think we have a pretty fleshed out data structure. Our partners is CDO. We have one data source. We're good stewards of our data. And we also know that data integrity is very important for AI, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So I think we're good. We can always improve. And if we're looking for partners to give us really good ideas to help us improve if we need to, but the partners that we've had in this space have been really good and very effective.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Hi. Let's see if this is on. Hi. Whoops. I'm not that tall. Hi, thank you for today. Today's been a fantastic day. And I think, Erica, I've been hearing on each one of these panels this afternoon, which has been fantastic. I'd like to hear from your vision as a CTO, overall CTO, what you see as the vision for the next, 3 to 5 years overall, where do you like to see CIS be? Yes, I'm putting you on the spot now.
Wow. Huh. So USCIS immigration is always in the news these days, right? Like it's everywhere. And like David said, at the end of the day, well, that means we have to go home. As David said, there's a human being, there's a person at the end of every one of those requests, those applications. Every time there's a humanitarian crisis, there are human beings in there. So I think our mission at OIT is a simple one, right? We need systems that are responsive, provide a good customer experience, and are cutting edge, right? We don't want our officers out there with subpar systems. We don't want folks applying for benefits on a system that they can't, navigate. I see opportunities to increase CX. Human-centered design was, we have a human-centered design director, and that was introduced before I became the CTO, which means this organization has been and is committed to providing a good experience, right? Other people have caught up. There is a CX directive from the department now that everybody needs to have a CX office. CX is everything. It's everything from the person walking the door to them logging in on their computers. And it's the underlying technology that will shore all of those things up. So I think for me, we want good customer experience. I've always kind of operated under 3 principles here at USCIS, and it was get the benefit to the person faster, reduce contractor touch time, and reduce adjudication touch time. Those things are always true. And then if I can layer on a beautiful customer experience on top of that, that's where I want to be in the next 3 to 5 years, because that's where I want to be 15 years from now also.
Does that get you, Sandy? Absolutely. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I was a little worried about you. Oh, do you? Okay. Actually, this is kind of a general question around all the systems and whatnot that are being developed or being deployed by, CIS to support the mission. One of the things that Kurt Anderson with Management Concepts, and we do learning, training, and education across the entire space for the last 50 years. One of the things that we're seeing kind of as a dynamic approach is that as these systems are being deployed, the technology is getting in the way of that not only the customer experience approach, but also the interaction that people in disparate parts of the country lose now that they actually access technology as opposed to people. And what's coming in place is that people are seeking out learning that is actually might be more role-based as you're going through these new system integrations and as they're rolling out. That are going to actually take not only existing members, but new members to help adopt what these new systems are going forward. So my question is this, is there consideration looking in the future for as you're rolling out these new systems and these new environments that you're including some training that's not only going to take, and I'm not talking tactical training, I'm talking training that's actually going to take and build a framework that the existing individuals can use that are already in the system, but new people coming in that are onboarding into the environment to know how to use these systems and know how to use them effectively using current training innovations. So I'm just trying to see whether or not there's any thought patterns there, because a lot of times that gets kind of baked in a little bit through, and provided by the integrators. But at the end of the day, it's, press this button, press F3, go here, as opposed to how does this actually apply into what I do in my day-to-day job? And how does that relate all the way up to the actual mission? So I'm just asking if there's any thoughts coming down the pike on that.
I'll go again. I think that we're just scratching the surface. If you've watched the news at all, our Gen AI pilot is a training pilot. It is about creating it's about creating a persona of an applicant that our officers can interact with that will help them gain real world experience in order to do their job. I think that is just one example of the many of the tip of the iceberg of where we are. Imagine all of the other things we can do. But I think this is my pitch for like good human-centered design, right? A world where we don't have to have extensive training that walks people through every button, something that is incredibly intuitive. That's where we want to go. And if we can use technology to help us create that, that's what we want to do. And then when we need training, we want to leverage those technologies to help us do that as well. But persona-based training is everything, right? We need to get there. It's people understand it better because it's actually what they do every day. But when you have training that's like, if this, then this, then this, then this, we lose people. So yeah, we're definitely looking to use it and to move in that direction. You're welcome.
Fantastic. Hi, my name is Sarah Saavedra. I'm with Vominos IT. We're actually really proud to be on that project with the AI persona building. But kind of my question was, we have a lot of, jargon, us IT folks, right? We're talking about human-centered design and horizontal delivery and agile and DevSecOps. What I love to hear is the human stories about what technology is doing to make a difference in the lives, whether it's the lives of our officers who are in the field and all they want to do is to do their job. They don't want to have to mess with their Outlook or their Teams, or they want it to work, right? Or whether it's the people who are looking for a path to citizenship. I would love to hear a story. If anyone has a story on this panel that they want to share about how technology has affected a human in the field, whether it's a CIS officer or someone looking for citizenship, I think that would be a great way to end the day.
Sure. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, our humanitarian efforts we're doing in OCONUS. We're going to some pretty remote places. We sent a team to 7 countries in Africa, and every country a little bit different. If you were in Kenya, maybe you had relatively decent Wi-Fi. If you were in Burundi, you were getting the hamster to run a little bit faster on the wheel. And the reality is the reason we're over there is because people are seeking asylum and they're desperate. And when we're taking phone calls before we send a team over there saying it's just spinning, we can't get anything to work. And so we send a team over there and we're able to process and completely clean out the backlog that was over there in Africa. I can't speak to any specific story on what happened, but I know I've talked to a few guys that came back from that trip and they were like, it was amazing. And and some of the pictures I saw with your router with Scotch tape taped to a wall that's kind of crooked and the wire looks like it's all chewed, and having to go run out to what they call Radio Shack, but it was something else, picking up SIM cards and stuff like that, just to get things to operate and fulfill these people's dream of coming to the United States. To me, it was very moving.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
I'll give you a story. I'll give you an origin story.
I love it.
I was an officer at the Washington District Office when I began my career at USCIS. And I didn't know how to work the screens because I wasn't familiar with Alt F7, Alt whatever. It just wasn't the thing. It was nothing I had ever been exposed to. So when the opportunity to move to the transformation program came about, I took it. And so I'm not just the CTO, I'm a person who was an officer here, and I get to improve the lives of officers every day. And that's huge for me. Every time we build a naturalization certificate, remember when we got those into Ellis and the officers were no longer taking photos and gluing them to the page? That was huge. Los Angeles has naturalization ceremonies with 2,000, 4,000 people in them. Imagine the amount of prep work you have to do. Well, I saw it come out of a printer with a photo on it and it was done. That's the stuff that happens every day when we got the I-90s into a streamlined case processing. Like, it's everything to get somebody's card to them before their previous card expires. And that's what we do every day. It's at the heart of everything that we do. Just like David said, there's a person behind everything. Horizontal delivery, let me tell you, that is not an IT thing. When I am building something, the business is with me. When we did all of those customer experience initiatives, from change of address to personalized processing time, we did usability testing with people in the public. So our partnership is not just a partnership of IT and the business within USCIS. That partnership is between the people of USCIS in general and the American people and those that we serve every day. We are definitely people first, and we want to make their lives better. It is totally not about just IT. It's about the outcomes of the IT.
Thank you very much. I 100% agree, and I think it's so important to come back to that and really connect it. I appreciate it.
I just had a follow-up question today on RFIs and responding to those. So I just wanted to provide a couple of tidbits of information. So one kind of pointer as well is when you're responding to those RFIs, if you could provide your size for the NAICS codes that we're contemplating, that's very helpful. As well as if you are of any specific socioeconomic category. Obviously, we make our set-aside decisions based on that market research, so it's very important. Another piece is, as we've talked about a little bit today, is kind of understanding our category management and the strategic sourcing vehicles that are available to us. So another helpful piece of information that you can provide to us is whether you are prime contract holders on any of those vehicles or even subs, working with companies on any of those vehicles. That's helpful information. And lastly, I wanted to mention that, there was a great question this morning on responding to RFIs and kind of what we look for. So if there is a requirement that you are interested in and you feel like your company is capable of doing that and you plan on, teaming or partnering, maybe subcontracting a portion of it out, that is very useful information to provide to us, because we'll also take that into consideration when we're looking at whether or not set aside is appropriate. You as a company may have kind of a gap, but if you have a plan for how you would work to fill that gap with your partnering with other companies, that's also very helpful. So I wanted to just mention that. We don't have any other Q&As, so.
Absent any additional questions, I did want to circle back earlier on the last panel. There was a question that came in from the Teams chat about whether or not we were going to sponsor security clearances. And what they were really referring to was whether or not a site security clearance was required, which is a DD-254. So I just wanted to clarify it is not required on any of those DevOps contracts. And if it was, we probably weren't going to sponsor.
Any further questions for this panel before we close them out and go to closing remarks? If not, thank you, panel, for your participation today.
I have.
Wait, I'm sorry.
It's
Luke?
not a question. It's a comment. Luke McCormack, former CIO, Department of Homeland Security. You all have hung in here, so I consider every one of you the warriors. So this is my little treat for you. I think I'll ask Erica that every naturalization ceremony is a public event. Is that correct? Or most of them are. And if you want to do yourself a favor, and if you really want to see people's lives change before your eyes, attend one of those ceremonies, because it's absolutely awesome to see what happens there and what this community and this organization is all about. And it's an actual wonderful experience. And you can see all the technology sort of woven in, and watch those people sort of accept that certificate and walk across that stage, so to speak. It's an absolutely awesome experience, and they have these all over the country, as I understand. So do yourself a favor and pay them a visit.
real quick, we're going to have closing remarks by Michelle Redding. So
I know I am your on the way out. So please, we want to appreciate each and every one of you today. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for the dialogue, the networking that we were able to do between the sessions, everything. That was, and this has been an incredible opportunity. I loved meeting you guys. We love the dialogues. We love the questions. Please do not hesitate to keep asking those questions. We want to appreciate you truly for taking your day. You have taken the entire day to be with us, whether it was virtually, whether it was in person. We want to truly thank you for that. Also want to extend our thanks to our speakers, our panelists, our executives, everyone that planned this event. This event took months to plan, to make sure that we had all the information, everything ready for you guys. So please understand also, information we shared today, this is all in person. This is all today's information that we have. So once the RFPs come out, once the RFQs come out, please understand they take precedence over anything that was discussed today. I know we talked about that earlier. I just want to make sure you guys understand that. And I want to encourage you, please take the surveys. We have the global survey, we have the tax survey, we have an operations survey. As we discussed earlier, if you plan to be a prime on any of these actions, please put in parentheses that you want to be a prime, you want your information shared, et cetera, et cetera. Let us know. We are going to take every response that we get in SurveyMonkey, and we're going to evaluate it for our next in-person and our quarterly calls that we do have. Please make sure you watch Sam. Mike puts out all of our quarterly sessions. They're virtual, but we will be having more in person. This was an extreme success, and it was based all on everybody that was participating today. So if there's no further questions, Mike, do you have anything further? I think everybody has to go through security, give your badges back, and please have a safe evening. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to mention the surveys anymore. I think we heard enough about the survey. But if you haven't heard about it, please take our surveys. Again, as Michelle said, we really want to hear back from you how we can better engage with you, not just at events like this, but even on the quarterly call. So tell us what you need to hear. As I mentioned earlier, I'll see some of you hopefully tomorrow at the 33rd Government Procurement Conference. Again, a good opportunity to network, see people in person, and interact with small business specialists across the federal government. And the next call is on the July 30th. So stand by for that announcement on or about July 1st. So we're going to be hosting that. And, oh, did I mention take the survey? All right. It's a pleasure. It's good seeing all of you. I look forward to the next event that we host here. But again, join us on July 30th. Take care. Be safe, everybody.